I have a 5-year-old daughter, and she is undecided whether she wants to play hockey or not. So we laugh a lot about that. My husband is a 6-time Paralympic sledge hockey player, also training for Beijing. So that's, and then I run hockey schools, primarily working with young girls. And I'm going to pass it over to Bob.
Been a long time coach and coach mentor. Bumped into Wally, I've got to say, 50 years ago, Wally, what'd you say?
I think it's 52.
It's been a long time, I know that. But anyways, I've coached in the Western Hockey League. I've coached in minor pro. I've coached with Dave King and Wally over in Japan. Worked with some of the national under 18 teams. And mentored a lot of coaches and players since I quit coaching full-time, actually. So that's kind of my story. We'll pass it on to Tim.
Good morning, Dave. Tim Taylor down in the Philadelphia, PA area. And you and I have exchanged some emails over the last season or two. Youth hockey coach at the Tier 2 level, 12U this year.
How you doing?
Good. And Wally, I'm not sure who's. Okay. I see Kim. So.
Okay, Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim McCullough. I'm in Toronto. I was also tried to score on Sammy for many years unsuccessfully in professional hockey. And I also am a mom. I've got 3 kids, 7, 5, and 3. I run a business called Total Female Hockey, which I've been doing for 14 years. So we run camps, and I create a lot of content on the internet, exclusively highlighting the female game and then addressing the needs of the female game. And I think, I'm also the director of hockey operations for Toronto Leaside Girls Hockey, which is the largest girls hockey association in the world. We have about 1,600 members.
Okay, Tom Malloy.
Yeah, I'm Tom Malloy. Currently, I'm coaching the SAIT in Calgary College, SAIT Women, and it's my 21st team that I've coached, college or university. I've coached at the 3 institutions in Calgary. I coach for the Red Bulls in Salzburg, Austria, where I get to coach with the Russian Olympic coach and Pierre Page and people like that. I also, with Johanni Wallsten, he's a Finnish Hall of Fame guy in the IHF Hall of Fame. He was captain Finland for years. Him and I set up the program for Austria. And it's a whole hockey curriculum progression, where you go through the hockey. And I've just been coaching for a whole long time.
Now, is there anybody else that hasn't been on? Okay, there we are. Matt Holmberg. I saw MH. Now I see your face, Matt.
Yeah, sorry, I was just had to run away from the computer for a bit. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Matt Holmberg. I'm the head coach of the Queens Women's varsity hockey team in Kingston, Ontario. Been with the team since 2006 and head coach since 2009, and had the absolute privilege and was fortunate enough to have Wally come out to Kingston about 8 or 9 years ago and be on my hip and over my shoulder for a week. And it was a transformative experience for me, and we've kept in touch ever since then. And that's how we're connected. Yeah.
Real good. Now, Dave, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself. We won't get into power play. Mm-hmm. We'll just get you to introduce yourself. And then Tim is sort of going to open the session. He's got a little bit to say about HP1, his HP experience with USA Hockey. Wanted to share some ideas. I was, trying to figure out, geez, coaching his grandkids, and he's taking the HP course. And that's like many of us here. We've all coached minor hockey. Our kids have grown up, though, and we're grandparents now, too, Tim? So go ahead. Now, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are Canadian, but your company is an American one?
Well, my life is complicated. I was going to ask, does my bio have to be true? Because it's not nearly as interesting as most of yours. So I am a Canadian and an American citizen, and I was born in the UK. So, life is complicated. So yeah, I grew up mostly in Vancouver, Canada, and now I live just outside Chicago. So hockey-wise, my experience with hockey is basically limited to skating on the outdoor rink all winter in Lachine, Quebec when I lived there, playing a little bit of high school hockey in Vancouver, and then assistant coaching my son's Bantam team when that time came around. But I wasn't a useful assistant coach other than the kind that moves the pucks around and lines up the cones. So, but my progress into, why I'm on this call today is really rooted in my experience as a hockey parent, not as a player. I should note that Wally and I have a similar connection in that we both coached high school football. So I was a head high school football coach. I played junior high football in Canada for 6 years. So, but my presence here on this call and my involvement in our company Power Player, which we can talk about later, is related to my experience as a parent, not as a coach. So that was the genesis of the development of the product itself. So, and I just wrote a novel. So, and in my day job, I'm a graphic designer. So, and I co-founded another software company back in the 90s, but we can talk about that at some other point as well. So
you're saying you weren't very interesting? Is that where you're going with that?
Well, not casually throwing out, I won a couple of gold medals,
Right, but perhaps you could rank as the most interesting man in the world.
Well, I do have this though. Somebody sent me this. This is from my book I just wrote. So somebody sent me a little, so I don't think it's gold. I'm going to have it analyzed. But so yeah, not very interesting. Not like you guys.
Okay, mic's off, Wally.
Sammy's written a book as well. She's also an artist, and I'm sure we'll get into everybody's wide background.
I read a book once.
Okay. Now listen, we're going to get on with some hockey stuff here, and I know I went to the Hungary, Denmark game last night. There was about 8 of us there, and Kim wanted to talk a little bit about the Worlds, and I was hoping to spend the whole time dedicating to talking about the Worlds when Tim Bothwell gets back on with us. But right now, Tim, you attended the USA Hockey HP. You had some thoughts you wanted to share, so take it away.
Okay, sure. Thanks. Yeah, so I let Wally know last Thursday that I wouldn't be on the call because I was traveling to Duluth, Minnesota to attend USA Hockey's Level 5 coaching symposium. And I just thought I'd take a few minutes and kind of give you my thoughts on what that experience was like. Just for a little bit of background. So in USA Hockey, when you become a volunteer coach for the first time, you take what they call the level 1, and it was originally designed like the typical volunteer parent would start with 8U, so they coach 2 years of 8U. So your level 1 is good for 2 years. Then you get your level 2 when you move up to the 10U level, and level 3 at the Pee Wee and so on. It's not really a hard and fast rule, because when I started coaching 10U, and I had to get my level 1. And so USA Hockey, in addition to those 4 levels, have what they call age modules. So as a 10U first year coach, I took my level 1, but then I also was required to take what they call the age module, which was training focused on how to teach and coach that age group. In the past, and even today, once a USA Hockey coach reaches level 4, they're not required to take level 5. And it up until this year, once you had your level 4, you didn't have to take any more USA Hockey training. Your level 4 never expired. And so those 4 levels, they're offered every year in multiple locations. Prior to last year, it was always, in person. Last year with COVID, they went virtual. And then this year, it's a mix. You can choose to go to a in-person training or do virtual training. And the levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 available all across the country. Level 5 is only held every 2 years in a single location. So it's a little bit more of a special event. Now, the one thing that USA Hockey changed with level 4 is now there's a continuing education requirement. So if you got a level 4 in the past, you could have a level 4 that's 10 years old and never have to do any continuing education. So that's a change that USA Hockey made starting this year. So level 4 guys every 2 years will have to do some amount of continuing education, and that'll be content that's produced by USA Hockey. Just looking at my notes here. Yeah, and Wally had referred to it as HP, because I guess maybe that's the equivalent there in Canada. But it's USA Hockey doesn't position it as high performance. There's actually a separate event for high performance. Level 5 is really more positioned for lifelong learners. In addition to sitting in a room, so in Duluth, there were over 400 coaches from 37 states represented. So it was a pretty wide swath. And then in addition to sitting in the big conference auditorium listening to keynote speakers, there were breakouts. And so there was a breakout sessions for 12U and 12 and under coaches, and 13 and over coaches, and then a goalie track. And those breakout sessions were very hands-on. We had to design practices, we had to design dry land drills, and those breakout sessions were led by USA Hockey associated staff. The keynotes, there was, I think, 4 NHL head coaches. Jeff Blasel from Detroit was the last speaker. Mike Sullivan spoke on Saturday. John Hines and Don Granato. Then there were 2 AHL head coaches for keynote speakers, 2 of the national team coaches, and then there were several women coaches as keynote speakers as well, in addition to a women's college coaching panel that was really quite good. Let's see what else. Some consistent themes. On the breakout sessions, I would say the overarching theme was better practice design for youth players. And USA Hockey is promoting a new practice design framework. It consists of 5 elements. The first element is fun. The second element is constant decision making. Third element is challenging, which they want the drills to be hard, but not too hard. It should look like the game. So no laps, no lines, no lectures, kind of a thing. And then the drills in the games should have a lot of puck touches. So all of the breakout sessions all kind of were designed to kind of help fill out that new coaching framework. Something that Wally and the rest of you guys might be interested in on the fun element. I don't know if you're familiar with fun maps. It's actually something to me is relatively new. USA Hockey, the director of female hockey for USA Hockey, her name's Heather Mannix, and she's I called her the director of fun. That's not a official USA Hockey title, but she's her education background. There's a PhD. I think in Washington D.C. area, but I might be wrong about that. But her name is Amanda Visick, and she's the one that is really the brains behind this Fun Maps concept. And Heather at USA Hockey is kind of in charge, or maybe made it her mission to educate all of us here in the U.S. about how to design practices that are fun and try to help teach the parents what the real concept of fun is. It's not, if the kids are well behaved in practice, we'll let you play a small area game at the end of practice for fun. And it doesn't mean that the kids are goofing off, which are some connotations that parents have when you mention the word fun. So if you haven't heard of Fun Maps, and just do a hashtag Fun Maps in Twitter, and I think you'll find it very interesting. We just got sent all of the presentations electronically yesterday, so I haven't had a time to go through them in detail. But probably the first one I'm going to go through is on the whole fun aspect. One of the breakouts, 12U breakouts, was specifically about how to incorporate fun into the practices and what fun means to youth hockey players. Then on the keynote presentation, there were some overarching themes, and I don't think it was planned. It just kind of worked out that way. So most of the high-level coaches spoke about practice design, how they design practices, how they run practices. And they did include a lot of small area games, but they weren't really so much in a small area. There were a small number of, quarter ice or 1/8 ice drills, but many of the drills or games were in-zone games, half ice games. And it made me think of the comment that Daryl made a few weeks ago when he designs games, at least for the older guys. He kind of wants spatially the net in the same, in the correct position. And I kind of thought of his comment when I saw much of the content that the high level coaches were sharing. And the other thing was made me think of Tom Malloy. Every coach mentioned transition. They threw out numbers like 400 to 700 puck transitions, possession transitions in an NHL game. I think every one of the high-level coaches had at least one slide, if not more, where they talked about making sure that they practice for transition. I think his name's Seth Applegate. I think I'm saying his name correctly. He's the head coach for the Rochester Amherst, which is an AHL team in Rochester, New York. And he indicated that the Amherst last year, or that's what we call them, they're Rochester Americans, they were in the top 5 for generating offense for the season. And he said he never practices 5-on-5 offensive play in his practices. He said he just doesn't do it. So that was kind of interesting. And then the last presenter was Jeff Blazel from Detroit, and his message was for us not to be copy and paste kind of guys, to not, a drill that Mike Sullivan showed may not work for us. So not just to take a drill that we see and drop it into our practice plan, that we should, put a little thought into it. And lastly, so in order to receive the level 5 certification, you're required to write they call it a thesis. So basically we come away from the level 5 conference with homework. And so all the coaches in attendance all have been given the same assignment. And that assignment is to, if you take your team or a team that you're associated with, and do an evaluation of the current skill set and practice habits of that team. And after making that assessment, we are to design a minimum of 7 one-hour practice plans to improve the weaknesses and deficiencies that we observe. And then after those 7 practices have been implemented and the kids get to play through the season, you then have to write a summary of what worked well, what did not work well, what you would do different, how the team improved. So that requirement is due sometime in between January 1st and the end of January 2022. So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of the USA Hockey Level 5. It was quite an experience for me. I really enjoyed it. So I thought you guys might like hearing what was going on south of the border. That's all I had, Wally.
Writing notes, and I had a question. You have NHL speakers, and quite often at the highest level clinics, they'll bring those speakers in, but then you have age group breakout groups. And I'm wondering how useful were the NHL speakers in terms of connecting with, the U9, U11, U13s? Or were they there just sort of as an attraction? And my fear in those occasions is their stuff is interesting and exciting to listen to, but people involved in minor hockey might just try to do that. And of course, there's too much work to go on to do that.
That's not the impression that I had as I listened to those guys. I'm just looking at the program here. So Don Granato spoke a lot about development at the low levels and moving up through the professional ranks. John Hines, his presentation was on team culture and identity and how to, well, what he does, I guess, to and his suggestions for the coaches in the audience to set a team culture and an identity and how important that is. If that's not done kind of up front, then the rest of the season can be difficult. Let's see, then who was Mike Sullivan. And Mike's presentation had a lot of video. It was mostly Penguins practice, and then he would show what they were practicing in their game like practices, show the same type of situation in game, real game footage. For me, I would have obviously simplify some of the drills that Mike showed. But I'll say this: I live in the Philadelphia area, so the Flyers practice facility is fairly close. And when I have a chance, I'll go over and watch the Flyers practice. And so I've seen Flyers practices, I don't know, for the last 3 or 4 head coaches that they've had. So I'm pretty familiar with how they practice. And I will just say it's nothing at all like the Penguins practice. So maybe there's a reason why the Penguins have the cups and the Flyers don't. And then Jeff Blasill's presentation probably had the least amount of drill and practice footage. He was really more focused on, and he talked a lot just off the cuff. He actually finished his presentation early on purpose. He left 20 minutes for questions from the audience, which none of the other speakers did. So I thought that was very interesting. So no, I didn't feel like we were getting any fluff at all.
Okay. I just wonder, anybody else got any questions? We do things our way in Canada, and anybody else, any questions on their mind related to what they appear to be doing there? I know I've listened to a number of the names he's mentioned, and really was impressed with the Pittsburgh head coach, a couple of his presentations. He really alluded to kids because his kids were that age at the time. Kim?
I think Matt was first, Wally.
Okay, I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't see your hand. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Matt.
That's okay. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, Tim, thanks for that. That's really interesting. I mean, I've gone through the process here in Canada, and it sounds like there's a lot of similarities and a few differences still, which is kind of interesting to hear about. Who was the coach that that said he didn't do 5-on-5 practices for offensive zone play?
I think his last name's Applegate. It's
That would be
Appert. Seth Appert. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The Rochester Americans AHL head coach.
And did he give an explanation as to why he didn't do 5-on-5 in practice? Like, was it because of available ice time, or was it a conscious decision from a preparation and performance standpoint?
What he specifically said that he did not practice was offensive zone play, 5-on-5. And again, I need to review his presentation, which I just got a copy of yesterday. But one comment that all the high-level coaches made is how little practice time they have, like almost none. So I think that may be a part of why he practices that way, Matt. That's just my hunch.
Yeah, it could be partly just he's prioritizing other things perhaps, and a bit. But I'd just be curious, because I mean I'm obviously in the midst of preparing practices for the season, and I think there's value certainly in just having a 5-on-0 if you want to work on some tactics, but eventually I believe you should have some constraints and some pressure and get used to that game, like, right? If one of these 5 pillars as you described is mimic the game, right, then having 5-on-5 would certainly be useful, right? But so I was just curious as to the mindset.
Yeah, I know they should be giving us access to the video of the session, so when I have a chance to review his actual comments, I'll be sure to get back to you, because
Matt, this relates to the theory of coaching, which is 21st century coaching, I think. The day of systems practice, 5-men's practice, I think, is going by us. Every 5-man concept and structured concept and deliberate practice concept, they've been doing for many, many years. So the small area games and the quick thinking, and Daryl Belfry alludes to it, it's just being able to apply the thinking within the drill or the competitive drill that has to go on. So Kim, you've got your hand raised, and go ahead.
Well, I was going to just piggyback on that comment and then go into mine. But the feedback I get from a lot of coaches who coach in female hockey say that actually the awareness of where to stand and where to be is one of the greatest weaknesses in the female game. So it's an interesting thought, right? Is that they do the drills, and I see it all the time. I come and run their training camp, and then you run a small area game that kind of looks like the game, and they have no idea where to go. And it's like they're all just like hugging in the middle like a bunch of bananas. So it's just a food for thought. And I'm sure it comes from not watching the game as much. That for sure is what's driving it. But I do think a lot of the coaches, especially in rep hockey or house league, rep hockey lower level and house league, that those players perhaps aren't watching the game as much, or aren't watching it with like a critical eye of where do I stand, or probably just watching the little black thing. So it'd be just interesting to think how that might apply at different levels and different age groups. My thought was actually a question. So Tim, you mentioned there was like different streams for, what we would call high performance. I think Matt and I did high performance 2 together way back in the day, and high performance 1. I found them to be quite similar with Hockey Canada. I actually did them, I think, a year apart, and I was like, I feel like I just did this. So I found perhaps that's different now, but I found the curriculum to be a little bit repetitive, and wished that I had given myself 5 years in between the two to learn a little bit more. But Tim, is with the, I mean, I don't know if you have any insight on what that high performance stream looks like there, but are they distinctly different from what you took? Like, is level 5 that you took different than the level 5 in terms of what the curriculum is? Or just different people in the room?
My understanding is they don't actually do the USA Hockey high performance clinics all that much. Matter of fact, I didn't actually do an actual level 4 for USA Hockey. When the Frozen Four, probably 4 or 5 years ago, the NCAA Frozen Four was in Philadelphia. USA Hockey did a high performance clinic. And I was up to do my level 4, and they said, if you come to this session, you'll get your level 4. And in a way, I kind of cheated, because I went one day to the high performance clinic, where I kind of felt like I probably would have learned more really if I'd have done the actual level 4. The only other thing that I'll say is, it's probably not fair for me to relate what I did for the High USA Hockey High Performance Clinic 4 or 5 years ago, because it's really evident that there was a big effort within USA Hockey to improve the way they teach and improve their curriculum. Those age modules that I talked about have been completely rewritten. They're not released yet, but the way they were described, it sounds pretty exciting. So without pumping the USA Hockey tires too much here on this call, the message or what I came away with was that there is definitely an effort to continually improve the education and the delivery of the material. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I have one more follow-up question on that. So, like with high performance 1 and 2, there's sort of a split between, what we would consider the softer things, like the mission statement and the team building and all of that sort of part of the presentations. And then there's like the power play and the PK and all of that. Is that similar in USA Hockey, or what would the split be between those things? Because if we had, say, an NHL coach, they would be likely to come in and talk about the power play for an hour and a half. Is that how it works down there?
No, other than John Hines talking about team culture and team identity, there wasn't really anything that would focus on, the aspect of mission statements and team covenants like Tom talks about. So that's a missing piece from my experience.
And then the coaches are actually like saying, do they actually break down by system and say, is this whole presentation on ozone attack or something like that? They're just talking about not the breakout rooms, but the speakers. It sounds like from what you described that they're just coming and kind of sharing some of what they do, as opposed to necessarily being specifically on a system. So I'm just trying to compare and contrast between what we're doing up here and what you guys are doing down there.
Yes, and a couple of the coaches described getting the phone call from USA Hockey inviting them to speak, and it sounded like they were not given a topic. They were just able to pick the topic that they wanted. So now there wasn't anything. There was nobody who spoke on the power play. Nobody spoke on the penalty kill. It was much more broad than that.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from anybody? Because to me, it's a perfect segue to get to begin to talk with Dave. One of the things that Dave and I are on, it is in the soft side of coaching. The idea of the mission statement exercise and establishing a positive, cohesive atmosphere or culture. And the tool that Dave has worked on and they've created, it's a device that I might get Dave to explain it, that really bridges the gap between my formal mission statement exercise and, to me, the app itself just solidifies it working. So I'm just going to leave it with Dave, and this factor of the X's and O's of coaching. We've talked about that here, and I much prefer to get into the soft side of coaching, the art of coaching, and the communication piece, the values piece of sports. So I'm going to turn it over to you for a bit, Dave, and then
Sure.
if we have time later, we can do some women's hockey talk, because I just heard Poulin's out for an indefinite time period. I just got a phone call. She took a puck in the throat, so advantage USA hockey, but advantage Canadian player that's going to get to play to develop. So go ahead, Dave.
Thanks, Wally, and thanks, Tim, for the insights there. I did my rudimentary coach certification through USA Hockey. You know, I'm outside Chicago here, and both my kids grew up in the USA Hockey system. My son ended up playing junior in Canada. My daughter actually went to school just outside Philadelphia for high school and played prep hockey out there. And she ended up playing at Miami of Ohio. So, and it's been interesting. I just made a whole ton of notes here. But, you know, Wally's intro here, you know, talking about the soft side of coaching. I love this because why is the soft side so freaking hard? It's actually the hardest part of coaching to me. In my experience as a coach, again, I was a football coach. You know, football is a heavy X's and O's sport. You know, you have to execute precisely on the X's and O's. The problem is you got a whole other team out there trying to disrupt what you're doing. And so, you know, when you play football, when you coach football, you're focused heavily on the mechanics of the sport, the tactical and practical, and very little on the soft stuff, which is, you know, what makes athletes able to do what they're able to do is actually the soft stuff. So I thought that was an interesting intro. But Tim, back to what you were saying. Well, I wrote this down. You know, at some point in your discussion there, you said, you know, you were asked to write a thesis about 7 practice plans to improve, you know, the deficiencies and weaknesses that you'd observed. And my immediate thought, based on, you know, this program that we've created, is what do you mean you observed them? Like, what does that mean? Does that mean you looked at some kids and thought they needed something, or did you actually know specifically what they needed? And I relate that to, I relate all of this to teaching. So I'll back up to the genesis of this platform. So it's called Power Player, and it's a feedback platform wrapped around a performance evaluation system. And it came about because when my son was about 15, maybe, I guess, I can't remember, but he started to get, you know, scouted by junior coaches, and they would come and watch him play, and they would literally watch him play. That's what they did. They just sat in the stands and like looked at him, and then they would ask to have a meeting. You know, and he's 15. He's a minor, right? Like I'm his attorney at that point in his life, and I'm like I'm in the meeting too. So I sat in the meetings, and these coaches, and they were guys mostly. I'll say guys. You know, they would say, yeah, you know, listen, we really like what we see out there. You know, what do you think your strengths are as a hockey player? And, you know, my son, 15, Mr. Mumbles, you know, he's like, well, I'm a pretty good skater, I guess, you know. And they go, yeah, we think you look like a really good skater. Why don't you move to Flin Flon, Manitoba and play for us? And I'm like, I would go home after these meetings. I'd be like, is that it? Is this really how this works? Somebody watches. They have no empirical data about this kid whatsoever. They don't know how he's progressed. They don't know if he's plateaued as a skater. They don't know if he's still improving as a skater. They see a snapshot in time, and they try to make the best decision they can make based on snapshot data. Now, if that guy was from the University of California and he was recruiting my son for the, you know, quantum physics program, he'd probably want to see some data. He wouldn't look through the window and watch him do a math test and go, "Hey, you look like you're pretty good at math," and my son would go, "Yeah, I'm pretty good at differential calculation." Like, that's not how that would work. There would be a ton of data, a whole lifetime of data to back up how this person is doing in this specific activity. So I would go home after these coach meetings and just kind of like, man, there's got to be some place where this data, somebody's got to be doing this. So this was 8 years. My son's 27 now, survived a brain tumor and is now a firefighter. So I'm very proud of him. But he was 15 at the time. So this was a long time ago. I got on the internet, started looking around. There was nothing like that did this, nothing. So I scratched out the beginning of this program, shared it with a friend of mine who actually was my client at the time, is now my business partner, and at one point had been my employee. And he had a young son who was about 6 getting into hockey. And Steve is not a hockey guy either. He's a basketball guy. He played NCAA basketball. And he's like, his kid's 6. And he's like, man, these hockey parents are nuts. He's been in it like 1 year. And I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. And he goes, and he goes, my son spends 70% of the practice standing around doing nothing. What's going on with that? And I'm like, we can get into that later. But so I explained the concept of power player to him, what I thought was missing in coaching. And to make a long story short, we all got together. A bunch of us got together in a hotel in Buffalo and probably had a few too many beers in the bar and decided we were dumb enough to try to do this. So we did it. So we built this platform. And basically it's a tool for coaches to provide a continuous stream of feedback, the same as your child's teacher would provide to you as a parent. You get quiz results, homework grades, test scores, parent-teacher conferences. This isn't your teacher, your son or daughter's teacher after class going, "Hey, great job today. See you next week." This is them methodically informing both you and your child of their progress. And it comes back to what Tim said, weaknesses and deficiencies. When my son was not doing well in Spanish, it was pretty obvious. So, we asked him, do you want to do well in Spanish? And if that was hockey, I'd be saying, do you want to do well in hockey? Hockey is optional. It's not what you are required to do. Unfortunately, Spanish, you can say unfortunately, but it's required. So the fact that there's no metrics, no even subjective feedback, very little coming from youth sports coaches to parents and to kids is, in my mind, something that can be rectified. Technology allows that to be rectified. And in my opinion, we've got a platform that can do that. So back to Tim, your point, so you got to design 7 practice plans to help improve weaknesses and deficiencies. Are you talking about for the team, or are you talking about for my daughter? Like, which weaknesses and deficiencies, and within my daughter, which specific weaknesses and deficiencies are you looking at? And then once you've decided how to design the practice specifically for my daughter, how will you know if you succeed? If you don't have a benchmark, you don't have any metrics from what she was like 7 practices ago, how will you know if these 7 practices have improved this thing or these things? And then, when you get into that discussion, the metrics are obviously different for 7-year-olds, or maybe there's no metrics for 7-year-olds. I'm not a big believer in metrics for 7-year-olds. I just don't think that's, Wally and I have had a few discussions about this, but when you're 16 and you're a AAA player, that's different, and there's not a huge gap between 7 and 16. It goes by like that. So, our question to all coaches is, what are the metrics? If the metrics are wins, then that's all I got to worry about. Like, then tell me up front as a parent, if I'm going to pay $10,000, that was my daughter's fees to play AAA hockey in Chicago, $10,000. And then, your focus is on winning, and therefore you're not going to put my kid on the ice for 10 grand. I need to know that. I need to know that now. I need to make that informed decision. On the other hand, if your goal is improvement in my daughter, and therefore improvement in everybody's daughters that are on your team, and therefore improvement in the team, and probably wins, that's a whole different approach. So I need to know these things up front. And Wally was gracious enough to take myself and my partner Steve and a few of the coaches that use our platform through his mission statement exercise. And they all found, I've connected with them afterwards, Wally. They all found it incredibly helpful. Alignment of expectations, alignment of goals, and really what Power Player, I'll just kind of wrap this up. What it does is it's a way to communicate within the Bermuda Triangle of coach, player, parent. That it's a bad place. And again, I've had 2 kids go through youth hockey. I would rate most of those coaches on communication. If they were in the Power Player system and I was able to rate them, most of them, they would have weaknesses and deficiencies. Let's say that. And I think communication in any relationship, personal, business, sports, whatever, it's critical. So that's the essence of what we're about. And I if anybody wants to see this thing, you can go to the website. But if you want to see how it works in practice, we can take you through a demo and click you around in this thing. But it collects both objective and subjective data. And what the coach provides is up to the coach. Okay, if you're coaching 7-year-olds, you don't need to provide me with a million metrics. You should benchmark my kids skating maybe at the beginning of the year, and then tell me how they do at the end of the year. Like, give me some metrics on that. Not the eye test. This is from the 1920s. Yeah, they passed the eye test. Like what? No, give me something I can actually look at, and then do you have the wherewithal, or does their next coach have the wherewithal to help that child improve in that specific? And then you're down to, as Wally and I have discussed recently, body mechanics, biomechanics, stance, balance, basic stuff. Do you have the wherewithal to do that? To me, it's an untapped. It's a potential advantage that's just not being used. And I think when I hear the word soft side, we don't do this stuff because it's not soft. It's hard. It's really hard. You're talking about people's, measuring people at the right times, and then, the other aspect of this is providing them with encouragement and what we call prescriptive feedback, which isn't, hey, good game, or hey, you got to catch that ball. My best football coach told me never coach the obvious. You're not coaching if you're coaching the obvious. Tell me how to do things specifically, and right down to the minutest detail, and you've got my attention as a parent. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to take too much time here. That's what we're about.
Dave, before I ask anybody if they have any questions, Tracy and I have played with this, and we played with it with Jordan Fenton yesterday. In other words, took us through a run of the program, and Jordan started relating it to the way that education is evaluated now. It's ongoing. It's not periodic. It's just ongoing daily communication between the parent and the student, and it's just like here between the parent and the player. So the app is privy to the coach staff, I believe, Dave, and the player and the parent. And that what's resulted is a respectful relationship, the parents appreciating the time and attention given to their child, and the coaches becoming more aware and conscious of the impact of their efforts. So it's a win-win situation, which absolutely gets people on the same page and just trying to get better at what you do, whether you're the coach or the teacher or you're the student. We all want the same thing. So
Yeah.
I viewed that side of the app that he didn't, he never really went into the skill tests and the drills to measure, but objectively provide metrics. And never went into the intangibles where the coaches actually do a behavioral report card on their players periodically.
Yeah, I won't.
You,
I mean,
you won't go into details.
I can hold up to the camera here. This is it's basically, it's on your phone. It's that there for hockey we have multiple sports in the platform, but for hockey, the main categories are skating, puck skills, fitness, intangibles. There's a practice module, gameplay, and then there's a custom module. So, for example, if you think about practice, I forget what it is, and I've been out of hockey for a while as a coach. But USA Hockey, Tim, what's the guideline for number of practices to game? What's the ratio they recommend?
I think it's 2-1.
2-1. Geez, it should be like 5-1. And I'm not sure what it is in Canada. Is it
3-1, I believe.
So,
Kim, you shook your head. What is it?
I live in Toronto, man. It's like the money side of, we get 2-1 usually, and sometimes we get 3, but like, most, I would say most of our teams are practicing 60 to 70 times a season and playing 60 to 70 games. So when it all comes shaken out, it's probably 1-1. To be honest with you.
You asked what the recommendation was, and I think I'm close to accurate on that. But our experience here is the same as Kim's. The kids will be on the ice 55 or 60 times for practice, and I think they're scheduled right now to play 48 games. Right. And this is a 12U team, and so it's.
When I was coaching, I'm sure maybe you guys have heard this too, but my coaches always said, you got to play like you practice, right? As a player, I was always like, yeah, that's bullshit. That's not true. That's not true. I'm going to show up to practice. I guess football is a little bit different. We played I think a 14 game schedule, and we practiced 5 nights a week. So, I wasn't going 100% in practice. I know I wasn't. I was not going 100% practice. And because the only thing that matters is what? The games, right? Like that's, kids aren't stupid. They know that the things you keep score in are the things that matter. So you only keep score in games. So how can you tell me I got to practice hard? You don't mean that, because there's no scoring in practice. There's no consequence, emotional or any other way, if I don't play hard in practice. So, they're not stupid. Even a 5-year-old, when my kids were little and we had a rink in our backyard here when it used to be cold enough, they would keep score out on the rink in the backyard. They knew that scoring creates competition. It creates intensity. There's a reason it's there. So, there's a practice module within the Power Player program. And, we've had coaches at various levels give us little anecdotes about how they use this practice scoring. It's a rating system. So, it's 4 simple sliders. It's, work ethic in practice, attention level. I forget, I should know this. I forget what the other things are, but there's 4 sliders. So you can pick a random Thursday night and, provide all of your players with a practice rating, and the system boils it down to, a number, right? And when we were creating this, I was working on it. My daughter was still in high school at the time. She looked over my shoulder and she's like, "What's that?" I said, "Well, how would you feel next season if your coach told you were going to get rated in practice?" And she kind of looked at me like, okay. And I said, you just won't know which one. You know, it might be tonight. It might not be tonight. It might be tomorrow. And she gave me that, teenager look like, I guess I'd have to skate harder all the time then. And I'm like, yeah. So we've had coaches tell us this is how they use the platform. It's not an all the time thing. It's a once in a while thing. And providing a rating on a practice to an athlete randomly, it does a lot of things, but it tells them that you are watching them, that you are actually paying attention, and that practice has a score. It has a consequence. I've had one college coach tell me he told all of his players at the beginning of the season they're going to rate the practices randomly. And he said, low practice rating for the week is the healthy scratch on the weekend. Now that's college kids. And he said, their practices were like, playoff games. Nobody wanted to be that scratch. So it raised the intensity. I had another guy tell me he's coaching 10-year-olds and they provided a few practice ratings here and there. And he noticed, his practice was lagging a little bit. The kids weren't really into it. So he said, I skated over to the bench and I had a little bag there and I kept my iPad in there. He says, I pulled the iPad out and I just leaned against the boards and the assistant coaches were doing a skating drill or something. He goes, I pulled the iPad out and he goes, I wasn't logged on. I just pulled the iPad out and I just looked at it. And he said, so there's always one kid that notices, hey, Coach Dave's got the iPad up and he must be rating us right now. These are 10-year-olds. All of a sudden, energy level up. So, the soft side of sport is the psychological side of it. And your body does what your brain allows it to do, right? I mean, so it's a coach's job to not just coach your physicality, but to coach your psychology as well. And to me, that's why the soft side is so hard. It's a difficult nut to crack. But we've tried to create a platform that begins to enable that. I think, Kim, you raised your hand there. Or?
Yeah, I raised my hand. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll start with this one. I mean, aren't we supposed to talk to our players?
Absolutely.
So no, and I mean that honestly. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't mean that facetiously.
No,
I just mean it to say, and I do a ton of feedback with my players in communication, and it's actually the number one thing I get rated on consistently for the last 15 years. So I'm not.
Can my daughter play for you?
Absolutely. I'm not coaching this year, but she can come work for me.
Well, she's 22 now. So.
But I know in working with, and I've mostly worked with teenage girls, so that would be my sort of target audience. What they see clicked in an app versus that 4-second conversation I say with them, hey, like, I see you're really working hard today, like, keep it up or whatever. I mean, that's worth 100 times what I click in an app. So, and I don't mean to dismiss what is in the app, because I do agree the tracking and the consistency, and I can't necessarily track mentally, have I got the touches on all 17 players or 18 players during a practice. So I do think there's, a value in being able to do it consistently. I would also argue that we do keep score in practice, or at least I did, but I'm super competitive. And usually at the levels I'm coaching, I'm surrounded by similarly focused players. So I would be cautious about making it, sort of adversarial and saying, well, if you don't get, whoever's at the bottom of the pile here isn't going to get to play, but we're in minor hockey, so we're not really doing that. But I also wonder, I don't think my dad ever talked to me about hockey. My dad knows a lot about hockey. I wonder if this is potentially swinging, those car conversations or those dinner table conversations in, a challenging way. Like, do the parent and player know too much, or is there some area where just the player needs to have that relationship with the coach, and maybe mom and dad don't need to know every single rating and ranking? I think there's a bit of a trust what I'm doing sort of thing here. But like I said, I haven't tried it yet, so I don't mean, I'm just giving some insights, I guess. But I think in girls hockey, comparison is the thief of joy, and the girls are horrible at it, and it's constant, and it's fear of missing out. And so if everyone knows the practice is rated on Tuesday, I guarantee every player is going to know, oh, what did you get for hard work, and what did you get for this? And again, is that good or bad? I don't know. But I could see in a female hockey environment, it could have its challenges, and it could also have its benefits. But I just think, I don't know, if there was a way to clone ourselves and we could each, like the NHL, where you all have 6 skills coaches and 4 assistants, and there's some nights I'm at the rink by myself because all my assistant coaches are working, and I'm just trying to get to the practice alive.
Sure.
So yeah, I think it's value for sure.
To answer your question, or your thoughts are valid. Obviously, I was being a little bit facetious when I said, "Can my daughter come play for you?" Because that has not been my experience in youth hockey. The communicative coach. So, and I've got some horror stories that I could share, but so communication, personal communication is fantastic. If you have trust between the coach and the kid, that's huge, right? And trust between the coach and the kid and the parent is huge. Wally and I spoke yesterday about, if as a coach, you've got parent issues, whatever, we all know what those might be. You're spending time and energy dealing with issues or focused on them. You're burning that time and energy on the wrong things. So, it's communication helps mitigate issues. So this platform, Power Player platform, is not intended to replace you high-fiving a kid after a great game, or it's not about that. It's about providing a way for you to coach from your couch, basically. After a game, after a weekend tournament, you could go home and go, man, that was great. We did great. You can jump into this thing, give everybody a couple of comments, couple digital high fives, upload. We've got coaches uploading, stupid videos off YouTube, funny stuff that's got nothing to do with hockey because it's funny, right? And so it's a way to bring people closer together, and it doesn't distance you. It brings you closer together. And I've got numerous, especially coaches of younger kids, a lot of younger kids, if they're shy, they're scared of my kids would never have asked their coaches a question ever. That's not my kids. They were just like, no, scared of coach, because Coach Bob or whatever determined their ice time. They didn't want to let Coach Bob know they didn't know something about the power play or about penalty killing. They just fake it, because if they asked them, that would let Coach Bob know they don't know, and they were scared of Coach Bob. So, I would ask, and the other thing, and I'm not a hockey genius. I've watched a lot of Hockey Night in Canada, that for whatever that's worth. But when my kids would get in the car after practice, I'd ask them, "Hey, how was practice? What's the answer?" "Good." "Oh, okay. What did Coach Bob say to you?" "Nothing." And I say to my son, you're playing junior hockey. No coach has ever said a word to you. It's unbelievable. How did you get there? Like, no coach has ever said anything to you, as far as you've told me. He just learned the game by osmosis, or what? So, some mechanism to provide me with trust. And I'm going to relate it directly to dollars. If I'm paying $10,000 for my kid to play hockey, I need to trust exactly what's going on there. I sent my kid to a private school. That was not cheap either, but I had absolute trust in those instructors. They were on the phone to us. They were on by email to us. They were wide open as professionals instructing my daughter in her academics. Why don't I get that from a coach? is it too much work? Like, I don't understand how it can be too much work. I don't get it, because if it's too much work for them and I'm paying them $10,000, if I paid them $12,000, would that make it happen? I just see it as a huge lack. And it, in my experience, and again, I can only look at this from my own experience, nature hates a vacuum. Okay. And so do hockey parents. Okay. If they don't hear anything or they don't get any feedback, they will create their own analysis of what's going on. And it may not be accurate. As a matter of fact, it probably isn't accurate. So, if I, as a coach, can provide, periodic metrics, a stream of feedback that is collected in a format that can be accessed later. If some issue does arise, we can go back into that stream of feedback and kind of look at what's happened, what we've seen as coaches. Here's the data to back up the decisions that we made about, what to do to help your child. And that to me is an opportunity to alleviate difficulty down the road. So, I understand what you're saying about communicative coaches. I wish there were more. I had one coach, I think he was coaching 10-year-olds. He said he had this one kid who was coming to practice and he never had a smile on his face. He's like, he said, he's one of those kids I could never tell if he was playing hockey because his dad wanted him to, or because he wanted to. He goes, he tried hard. He wasn't a great skater. He just only been skating a couple of years, whereas other kids have been skating 3 or 4 years. And he goes, so we did the skating metrics thing and power player. We did some stick puck skill stuff, and they kind of made it like a NHL combine. They brought in pizza for the kids, and the kids thought it was like the big leagues. And then he called me one day and he said, we did the fitness off ice stuff. It's just like push-ups and sit-ups and standing long jump, basic stuff that you can do in the rink lobby. And again, they made it like a big deal for the kids. And he goes, I got a call at 9:00 at night from this kid's mom. And he said, as a coach, when you get a call at 9:00 at night from a parent, that's probably not good. So he goes, but I answered the phone. And he said, it was this young guy's mom. And she said, she said, he got home and he'd opened up his Power Player app. He got a ping on there and he saw how he did. And he basically crushed the fitness thing. He's like the fittest kid on the team. And she goes, he's in the basement right now doing push-ups. So, like, he's so excited. He's so jacked up. He can't wait to come to practice. So the coach said he got on the app and he sent the kid a little note through the app. It goes to the parent too. He said something to the effect of, if you work as hard on your skating, half as hard on your skating as you obviously worked on your push-ups, you're going to be a fantastic skater. Don't worry about it. See you Thursday. So that kid showed up at the rink Thursday, high-fived the coach. He said, he never even made eye contact with me before. He literally, it changed his whole demeanor just to have that little piece of communication, because I could tell him 20 times, good job. When he saw it, he knew it. So it's not intended to replace personal communication. It's intended to enhance it. As a matter of fact, the more, the merrier. The more connected players are to the adults who have to or are tasked with helping them progress, I think is beneficial. I think somebody else had a hand up at some point. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Tom Malloy?
Yeah, I just, I like the idea of, I taught phys ed for 1,000 years. So
that's a long time.
Yeah. And when the kids, the first part of every class was they ran and then they did their exercises. And I would give them a plus or a minus or nothing. Nothing if it was average, a plus or a minus. And of course, I was teaching my last couple of years, 300 different kids, and I had to do report cards on 300 kids. And the parents would sit down and ask how I came up with these marks. And I'd show them. It was similar with the skills and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And having some kind of a feedback like that, I never had an argument from a parent. Like the kids, if they got a minus, they'd say, well, I'd say, well, you can eliminate your minus by getting a plus, and I can see this app as a good way as a hockey coach because, I'm coaching college and I might have 25 players at practice, right?
Right.
But I do have assistant coaches there, so if there's a simple way to just do things, because I know for myself in what I want to do as a coach, I want to improve every year. I want to improve the feedback to the players about, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and what they need to work on, and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a good feedback tool for that. So,
Tom,
so I can definitely see benefit to this.
Yeah. Dave and Tom, this made me think of phys ed, being a phys ed teacher, teaching, and how do you mark? Well, a partner that I taught with and we created a system which is similar to this. It's not on an app, but
That's because computers weren't invented yet, Wally.
Yeah, the self-evaluation in phys ed, giving a mark in phys ed, well, your jocks usually get high marks. And kids don't want to take phys ed that aren't good athletes. So we changed the marking system. They evaluated themselves. There were 3 areas. You could rate your athleticism, your physical ability related to it, 30 to 70%. You pick. You could relate your knowledge of the sport. So you could do a paper, rules, research, history, whatever. Your knowledge of the sport, 30 to 70%. And the last thing was your intangibles. If you worked hard, if you did everything required, if you put the effort in, you could rate yourself that. You had to rate yourself a percentage to your advantage. And we would sit down after with each student and quite often raise a mark. Nobody got lower than 75% in phys ed. And it became pretty popular, and it was adopted by, passed on to the Department of Education in Alberta. The teacher I work with moved to California, and she's taken it to another level out there. But it's similar. The one thing I asked I asked Tracy about the app was, I just thought if there's a place for the kid to rate himself, and
Yeah, well, if I can just interject, we did build that module.
Yeah.
And when we beta tested the platform with a bunch of teams in Ontario, and we had a couple of AAA programs do the self-evaluation stuff. And it was enlightening, but it was decided by everyone that should wait.
Okay.
And the other thing that should wait is, having the kids evaluate the coaches.
Yeah.
And or the parents. That scared the crap out of the coaches.
Yeah.
So the tools have been sort of designed, the self-evaluation piece. What we found was actually an interesting scenario was we had the coaches of one of our beta programs evaluate their kids in our criteria, but without using the platform. They did it on paper, and they sort of evaluate, and then, you could rank the kids from here, right? And when they'd actually used the platform, they put in, I think, 9,000 data points on these kids, and it was astounding to us. They had no way to actually view the data. They could only input. We hadn't built the visualization side of it yet, but these coaches were fantastic. They put in a ton of data, and when they looked at the data, their evaluations on paper were wrong. they were not how they evaluated the kids in a continuous mode over time. Some of the kids that they thought were like weaker kids were actually they're more consistent, strong. Like they're somewhat surprised. The other thing that was funny was they were high-fiving themselves like, man, we're good coaches. We're awesome. And I'm like, what are you talking about here? Like they were looking at a line of like, this is how your kids are sort of ranked. And they said, well, the difference between the highest rated kid and the quote unquote lowest rated kid was minuscule. The line was like this. It wasn't like the highest rated kid was over here and the lowest rated kid was over here. They were like this. And he goes, these kids, he goes, we picked these kids. We picked this team. And the data that we're looking at now shows us that we did a good job of picking the team, because the difference between quote unquote the best puck handler and the weakest puck handler is minuscule. So there's a lot of learning in that exercise. And the other thing is, when you see data like this, and I'm fascinated by your phys ed references there, guys. But I loved phys ed when I was a kid because I was a jock, right? I did not like French. So guess what I did well in and what I didn't do well in. Now as an adult, I wish I'd done better in French, because that when I go to Quebec City, I like to be able to order dinner and get what I think I'm ordering. But so it's a strange thing. And I think in hockey and especially in the more competitive sides of sports, AAA side, it's a hard thing to realize that it's mathematically impossible for everybody to be above average. It's just not possible. That's a mathematical impossibility. So, we spent a lot of time talking with coaches on our advisory board when we created the product, talking about, what's it going to be like for a kid to find out they're quote unquote, the weakest puck handler on a team. And again, I probably didn't explain this before, but kids only see their own data. They don't see anybody else's data. They see themselves relative to an anonymous peer group. They see it high and low, and they see where they are. So unless you're the team high or the team low, you would never know where you are, where anybody else is. But we spent a lot of time worried about that, and we talked to actually a lot of kids about it too. And one kid, now granted he was a bit older, he was probably 14, AAA player, and he said, well, I'd love to be the worst stick handler on the Montreal Canadiens. But yeah, somebody at every level, there's differences between athletes. He goes, but if I'm on a AAA team, I made that AAA team. So which is why metrics for young kids, I'm not so big on that. For young kids, it's digital high fives. To me, it's like give them the high fives, and we can get into coaching philosophy, but I'd say just give them the puck and let them go play. Stop teaching them. Like, let them go play. Let them go screw around out there and self-organize. And, of course, parents will go nuts over that. But, as I watch my own kids progress to the point where, they're trying to make a team. Okay. So how do you make a team? You are evaluated. Okay. And so you made the AA team and your friend made the AAA team. Why? The parents assume it's because the AAA kid's dad is an assistant coach. They don't know whether the AAA kid is quote unquote more qualified to be on that AAA team than their kid is. They have no insight into it, none. So they create their own reality around it. And I think, Wally, your phys ed example, and Tom, your phys ed example, having data to back up a decision. It just, as a business, I'm a business guy. That makes all kinds of sense to me. Yep. Steve, my business partner, his wife is a elementary school teacher. She's all about data. She keeps asking Steve, when are you going to do a version of Power Player for teachers. It's the same concept. So that's where we're at.
Well, I just wanted to mention when Kim brought up the point, like, the idea she can do it verbally and she does it verbally. She does it. The parents don't know that.
Well, you asked the kid what the coach said, nothing.
Yeah, but the advantage to me, when you have in your app the ability of the coach to put in a comment, add a video, add a PDF on the phone, and build somebody up. The parent knows that you've taken the time and trouble to do this for their child. You're communicating.
Yeah.
That's the power of the app. It's great to be able to, be the hands-on, on the ice, right moment person. But boy, it allows you, it takes it to another level when you make it accessible to the parent. They're not there watching you pay attention to their kid. Or maybe you've not paid attention to a kid, but you're starting to look at all the names and the kids. You're starting to look at and process much more thoughtful information on them in a positive way. The idea of it, use it positively. And the fact that parents love it, I just see mission statement accomplished.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a good positive experience.
So there's another psychological aspect to this type of communication, is that I mentioned in a prior few years back, I co-founded another software company that was in the feedback world. And if you go on like aircanada.ca or whatever, there's a little feedback button that's on that website. That's our technology that we created in the 90s. So, when we started to set out to create that technology, people would look at us and say, well, if you put a little feedback button on a website, you're only going to get people who are, pissed off. It's going to be, pardon my French, but the term was, it's going to be a bitch box. People are just going to get in there and complain. And we were like, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to, because the prevailing idea back then was that, you surfed the web. This is like 1997, right? People surf. Nobody surfs the web. You look for things and then you go to websites that you are trying to access and you're trying to use or you're trying to get information from. And so you've invested time going to that website. And if you can't get what you need from that website, but you could provide some feedback, says, you've got a broken link or you've got this, you want that website to be better. And so when we installed the beta system of that feedback platform, the feedback that came through was overwhelmingly, constructive. They might have rated the site like a 2 out of 5, but here's the comment: you've got a broken link. The rating provides the indicator that there's an issue. The comment provides the insight into how to fix the issue. So what we found with Power Player is that the comments that coaches put in here is overwhelmingly constructive. It's overwhelmingly positive. And there's a psychology to that. They know that they're doing it out loud. They're not in the locker room yelling at the kid. They are in the car with the kid and the parent they're doing it out loud. So the comments that go in are overwhelmingly constructive and positive and encouraging. And so the mechanism itself and the psychology behind interacting with a mechanism like that promotes what you just said, Wally, is like encouragement and what we call in the feedback world prescriptive feedback. It's instructional / motivational. It's not you had a bad practice. It's like, Billy, I've told you 3 times, please don't shoot the puck off the boards while I'm trying to explain a drill. And that's why you got a low rating tonight. The Billy can take that information. He can discard that information if he wants, or he can go, well, next practice, I'm not going to shoot the puck off the boards. It's your job as the coach to notice Billy didn't shoot the puck off the boards tonight or ever again. And then you get in there and you give him a 100 rating and go, Billy, loving it. You reward the behaviors you want to see. So it's basic psychology. But the fact that you're doing it through a machine that delivers the communication to multiple sources and is recorded, it changes the dynamic of it. So it doesn't replace that personal, pat on the back or high five or man, you really crushed it out there. It enhances it, and it gives the coach an opportunity to provide the kind of feedback that a kid is going to be able to act on. Like it's here it is. It's written down. Younger kids, they don't have the self-awareness or the self-determination maybe to know they can act on these things. But if you're coaching 14-year-olds, the kids that are starting to become self-aware and self-determined, it's a great way to provide the kind of coaching insights that they need to make the decisions that are going to take them forward. I think you're muted, Wally. Sorry.
It's going to make a better coach and a better parent. What else do you want for your kid? My
kids definitely wanted better parents. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Well, we are what we are, and we try our best. But appreciating a teacher is rare. Appreciating a coach isn't as rare as appreciating a teacher, I think, from my experience in academic classes. It's, they want their kids to do well. We all want our kids to do well. The primary resource, most important resource in our futures is our children. And the thing that resonated with me more in this conversation was you pay $10,000 to go to a prep school and you chose it wisely. But boy, there are prep schools which double shift and triple shift the best players and aren't developing very quality people when they leave school or they go into the NHL. They're just creating entitled athletes by trying to win the game and overplay the bench. And this app is, to me, has got great potential, and its possibilities are, limitless in my mind. Well, anyway, Tim Taylor.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, I got a question for Dave. Did your daughter go to the Hill School?
She did go to the Hill School. How do you know this?
Well, I mean, we play games at the rink at the Hill School, but I coached a girl several years ago who ended up playing there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll tell you a little story about how she ended up at the Hill School. And this was, academically, obviously fantastic environment. But how did she end up playing there? She was playing AAA here in Chicago. She was in, I think, 9th grade. And my wife was with her at a tournament in Stony Creek, Ontario. And I could not be there, but they were at this tournament. And my wife calls me and she goes, yeah, you never believe what happened. This coach came up to me and asked if I was number 28's mom. And I said I was. And he said, yeah, I really like the way your daughter plays. And I'd love to talk to her if that's okay. And my wife was like, okay. Now to give you my daughter, I know you're recording this. I hope my daughter doesn't watch this, but she would probably freely admit she's been a 3rd/4th line player her entire life at every level. So she was, she's not a goal scorer. She's scored some, but that's not her thing. she's got different skills, but those skills don't show up on the score sheet. And it's back to that, kids aren't stupid. We only measure what matters, right? You don't get goals or assists or even penalty minutes, or, plus minus, we can go into that, but that's a whole questionable metric that I don't think makes any sense from a data standpoint whatsoever. If you're a goaltender, you get save percentage and things like that. So, but when you're a fourth line player, okay, you don't show up on the score sheet. So, and you rarely get the coach telling you, man, you killed it out there today, right? Dude, that's not what happens. So when my daughter came off the ice at Stony Creek and my wife told her, hey, like, this guy wants to talk to you. Her immediate reaction was, no, he's got me mixed up with somebody else. Like, he's got the wrong number. Like, I'm 28. He's probably looking at 26, And so my wife's like, I don't think so. So the guy comes over, introduce himself, and they have a little conversation. He basically says, yeah, I love the way you do what you do. Like, that's exactly the kind of player that I think we need to help build our program at the Hill School, blah, 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 and so afterwards she's like, well, that was weird. Like, that's never happened before. So, he was pretty like adamant about, like, I think you'd be a great fit, blah, blah, blah. She was like nervous to go. She didn't end up going. We offered it to her. We said, like, if you want to go, you can go. She said, no, I think I'm going to, stay and play AAA again. And so fast forward 1 year, exact same thing happens again. It's the same guy. It's in Stony Creek. He shows up again. He goes, hey, remember me? And he goes, I really think you'd be a great fit now. And, that was it for her. She was like, no coach has ever seen what I do as something they would want. And so she made the move to go play at the Hill and had 2 fantastic years, grade 11 and 12, and ended up playing at Miami University. Again, a solid third, fourth line player whose coach said, just do what you do. I don't need you to do what these girls do. You do what you do, because that's important. So that psychology alone changed her entire demeanor about the sport of hockey, like everything. As a matter of fact, changed it so much, she got a hat trick one game, which was like unbelievable. She scored a goal in her first college game. She hadn't scored a goal in like the previous, so, I think those 4 goals were it for her college career. But anyway, she was a valued member of that team. So what we've tried to do is create a way for a coach to say, you know what, I can't win with a team full of first line players. I need everybody to be themselves, and I need them to do the things they do so that the others can do the things they do. And together that makes us a strong team. So, how do you let that fourth line player know, man, they just killed it today, like, and record it and send it to them and send it to their parent. So they go, holy crap, this coach sees me. This coach sees me for who I am. They see me for what I am. They see my value, and they encourage that. And that makes me want to do it even more. That's what this platform is about. And, underlying all that, the first group we showed this to, when we just had a concept, we didn't have a product at all, was the Philadelphia Phillies. So we got a meeting. One of our co-founders is a former major league scout and pitching coach. And so he got us a meeting with the Philadelphia Phillies. So we went in and had a great meeting. Pat Gillick, the president of the Phillies, actually opened the door and let us, we were scared out of our minds. We didn't know what we were doing. We sat in a room, and Mr. Gillick said, the guys will be right in. And we're like, what guys? And he says, well, the coaching staff, or the scouting staff. 26 scouts came in to watch our like little presentation on what we thought we were going to do. We had no, we thought we were going to be two guys in a room with a whiteboard. 26 people came in, and we took them through the baseball version of what is now, this product, with coaches at little league levels inputting their opinions about players' work ethic and their intangibles, how they behave on the bus, all the little things that we want to encourage as coaches. And they listened very carefully. And unbeknownst to me, it was the day before the major league draft. I couldn't believe these guys were spending 2 hours with us. But when we were done, they had a lot of questions. One of them was, are you trying to put us out of a job? Because if you get all this data, what are we here for? And we said, well, no, we're not trying to put you out of a job, but if say, 10 years from now, we have 100 million data points on 10 million baseball players from the age of 7 to 17 who might end up on your radar screen. Do you think you might want to look at that data? And they're like, when can we see it? Like, yes. How do we get hold of that data? How do we know how a kid has progressed as a human being and as a baseball player through their youth years, 11U, Wally, and through their adolescent years, and then into the, their young adult phase as they're getting ready to go play college baseball or whatever. When can we see that data? And we said, well, if you give us $5 million, we'll go build it for you, but it's going to take some time. But they immediately, one guy asked, why would I trust, Tim Taylor's opinion of a kid? Why would I? And, the answer to that is, well, you probably wouldn't. But if Tim Taylor coached a young baseball player and Al Ramsey coached a young baseball player and Wally Kozak coached that same player, and they don't know each other. They're like, my son's probably had 100 coaches. He's played in Canada, he's played in the US, he's played in Illinois, Wisconsin, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. Like, he's had 100 coaches. These coaches don't know each other. But if they had all rated his work ethic in practice consistently in the 90s, well, that's the truth, because it's empirical data collected from what we call distributed sources with a common methodology. So if they looked at my son's metrics, and his metrics put him in the 90th percentile for all pitchers, let's say, and his intangibles put him in the 90th percentile, and a similar kid's metrics were in the 90th percentile, but his intangibles were in the 70s, which kid would they talk to? They would talk to the one with the highest intangibles and the highest metrics. So the other outfall of that is if it turns out that 10 years down the road, Tim Taylor just has a knack of identifying 12-year-olds who are going to be fantastic 18-year-olds, maybe we want to talk to Tim as well. They finally went, we want this information. So, Power Player is not designed to kind of replace one-on-one coaching or the human side of it. It's for those of you who are like teachers, like Wally, and it's their report card. It's their SAT scores. It's their parent-teacher conferences. It's their evaluations collected and delivered to them so they can act on them, but also recorded so that if, whatever the percentage of kids that reach the pyramid where they want to keep going or they can keep going, they can bring that data with them, and they can show the coach of a junior team that's scouting them. Like when my son was, instead of asking him what his strengths were, he could have said, well, I'll give you access to my Power Player account and you can see. Instead of me telling you, I think I'm a pretty good skater, hey, this is what I'm doing. I think I can improve from here, but this is where I am and this is how I got here. I think you're muted there, Wally.
The privacy of it is really good because information sharing confidentiality, and the fact that it's only privy to the coach, the player, or the coaches of that team and the player, it's critical to maintain that privacy. But the ability of the player to be willing to share this, to promote their causes there. I don't really care about baseball, football, hockey. Those intangibles are you're developing for them for life.
Yeah.
And what you're doing, when you talked about your daughter, the Hill School transmitted belief for the first time.
100%.
I wrote that down immediately. They saw a quality in her that you need. They didn't just see the star, the glitz, the glamour, and they might not have even. The Hill School people would have seen the star, glitz, and hammer, but would also seen that player staying on the ice too long and banging her stick in frustration.
Yeah.
So they're making choices to choose student athletes for their culture that they're building.
And that's why, well, I started to interrupt, but like when you said those words to me, when you asked me, way back when we spoke the first time, the two words, and you said that is such a loud and clear bell to me. And all Power Player is this platform is it's a technology to enable you as a coach to transmit belief. Now go coach, go do that thing. Like use this tool, and I'm going to steal that transmit belief thing from you, Wally. So I hope you're okay with that.
No, we're good. We're good. Now listen, Al, you got on a little late, but I'm going to be sending out the whole presentation, and hopefully you'll have time to view it. But Al's the guy who's taken this mission statement exercise to another level and developed team building activities with a picnic and outside games. I think I talked to you about it already. But Al, how things going in your world with your young lad who unfortunately got COVID?
Oh,
It's going pretty well. Well, he's not quite himself there this morning, but he's not. I wouldn't say he's got any severe symptoms. Just a little under the weather. But yeah, I've only unfortunately I only got 30 minutes today to get on. In between work calls, but I like everything that you're saying, Dave. I think there's a lot of stuff that resonates, and from our side, I mean, we've done a lot of parent surveys, right? And one of the things that consistently comes back on it is they want more feedback, both individual feedback and feedback on the team. So that's come in over the last couple of years. And we do the survey, mid-season, you Survey Monkey, right? Like online kind of thing. We get a lot of data points from that, and that's been consistent. So like from our side, we did because of that, we did a low tech kind of solution. We started doing a feedback process that we do with the coaches mid-year with feedback cards, right? And that's good. It's better than nothing, right? And we've seen that feedback improve from the parents. Like we're hearing less about, I don't hear feedback from my coach, but at the same time, I know what we're doing is not like we're doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Right.
No, you're doing more than the bare minimum. You're at least doing something. That's the bare minimum is nothing.
Well, yeah, we're doing something structured, and it's not that the coaches are not giving feedback in the course of practices or in the course of their coaching and stuff like that, but it's something structured, right? That the player can have in their hand and the parents can have in their hand, and they can see and read, and it gives them that record. So I think, I'd love to be able to have something that's takes it a step further than that.
Right.
I think it's awesome. And I know that there's value in that, right? Because the kids read the cards. I've seen them read the cards, and we tell the coaches to keep it simple, right? But we've seen the kids read the cards, and they put a smile on their face.
100%.
Right? And we want to hear them. We want to see that happen, and we want to see that happen regularly. And we should also, with that smile on their face, they should get something that they can learn from too.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's a great concept. I've had a chance to look at the product, a couple of years ago. You and I talked.
Yeah.
And we did some demos and stuff, and I think the product was really, really excellent. So
No, thanks.
Good job.
Thanks. It's funny you say that. I have this on my desk. This is my son's, the one and only feedback card that I think he ever got. One. And I'm pretty sure he read it. So, these things, this stuff matters, but I had to dig for this one. I just accidentally found it when I was cleaning out my basement the other day. So
Yeah, it does matter. And, the kids right now, and I think there's a little bit of disconnect between the coaches generation and where the kids are, even the older kids, right? In terms of like the adoption of mobile technology and stuff like that. If I look at our coaches, myself included, like I don't use we have a scheduling app. I don't use it because I don't use my phone for things like that. I use my phone to call people.
That's
right?
weird.
But that's not what the players are doing. Like more and more, those players are using their mobile devices and stuff to engage, right? And that's where they're getting their stuff, especially now, where a lot of kids spent the last year engaging pretty much online for their school and getting their feedback online and things like that. Whether it's a mobile device or whether it's a laptop or whatever, it's only become more important in the last year.
Yes.
Right? And I think the more we as coaches can kind of get on their level with respect to that, myself included, the better off we'll be able to communicate with them. So
yeah, I agree. And it's funny, we hear a lot, kids today, they're not like we were. I'm like, well, no kid, like, they live in the world we created. It's not their fault that they are what they're like. They did not build this thing. We gave it to them, and so we gave it to them. We set them in this world. Maybe we should live in their world. We should live in the world that we created for them. It's funny when we show the platform to, I'm going to generalize here, older coaches, a lot of them are like, oh man, I don't know. That looks like a lot of work or whatever. When we show it to coaches that are like my son's age, 25, 26, they're like, can I get this on my phone right now? Like, can I download like right now? So I agree. There's a bit of a disconnect, but Wally and I had a good conversation the other day, and Wally, I'm going to paraphrase what you said, but he said something to the fact that I may be an old timer, but I'm not old school, and lifelong learning and all that is part of the deal. And I think, as more coaches kind of embrace this stuff, and even other coaching apps like, Coach Them and things like that. These are all good for the game. They're all positives. To me, it's you're not skating on your 1973 CCM tax. You're skating on 2021, right? Bauer, whatever they are now that I don't have to pay for anymore, which is fantastic. But you're not using 1970s goalie pads. Why would you coach like it's the 1970s, right? Like we've got to evolve. And I think I see it happening. It's happening.
Bob Laux?
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with all what you're doing here, Dave. I think one of the side benefits of this is you're going to get a lot of average coaches that are going to learn a lot about themselves, about their coaching, and about their communication skills. They're going to have a formal way of putting this stuff down and transmitting it to the players, which I think is going to make them a better coach. But I also think they have to build a personal relationship. So I hope they don't take this as a way that they're communicating with the player and the parent and not really building that personal relationship where they sit with the player and maybe the parent and go over this information as to why he put it in the app the way he put it in.
Yeah.
Because I honestly believe as a good coach is doing a lot of what you're talking about, just not putting it down formally.
I agree.
Really think they have to make sure that they still have that personal relationship and don't use this in place of.
So one of the things, Bob, that's a great point, is, when we built the platform and tested it originally, the coach can, input a comment for a player and send it. There's no way for that player to respond. We eliminated that. We said, no, we don't want that. It's not a texting mechanism. So it's basically one way. But the psychology of that is I'm your coach. I'm sending you a comment, and you can either like it, okay, I got it, or you can question mark it. If you question mark it, I get notified that you don't get it, or you want to, there's something amiss. I can say, hey, see me before practice on Thursday. Let's talk this through.
Right.
What it's doing is it's creating conversations. It's creating one-on-ones in person in the lobby before the practice or after practice or whatever. Because, you know, if I send you a video of the Leafs power play zone entry and I go, hey, you know, this is the Leafs doing our zone entry, only we do it better. Ha ha ha. You know, see what Marner did there, and I get a thumbs up. I know you got it. If I get a question mark, I go, hey, you know, we got a question about that. You know, let's talk on Friday or whatever. So, you know, we don't want it to be a replacement. It's an enhancement, and it's a promoter
Okay.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what communication is, right? It's receiving a message, understanding the message, and communicating the message back that you have understood it.
Yep, 100%.
The thing that came to my mind was today, there is an evaluation form at the end of the season for the coaches. And this idea of self-evaluation.
Yeah.
And I've shared that sheet with you that I used to set the stage for the mission statement exercise, the Hall of Fame questionnaire, where it's all ethical coaching questions. And the coach does it, the player does it, and the parent does it. And that's open, critical communication about your sincere communication and respect ability in the role you play as a coach and how the players and the parents perceive you. So it's used as an evaluation tool at the end of the season. And coaches will be gone based on lower parent and player ratings. And I think that's legitimate. You're not going to be a lifelong learner like we are. And we don't want coaches like that to be affecting our kids. But I want to develop coaches. I want to give them the chance. And that's where the exercise begins, like Tim said. Level 1 in Canada, Coach 1. And they go up four different levels, but that's the point. The app complements the ethical piece of coaching, and it complements the Major League Baseball piece of coaching and scouting.
Yeah.
And all we're doing it for is minor hockey, and it's life skills, period. It's common sense.
Yeah.
So we got to quit shooting ourselves in the foot and get on the same page.
Well, could that coach evaluation not be done at mid-season as well? You know, in a respectful manner, where the coach can maybe get a feel for what his weaknesses are and try to make some improvements, so that by the end of the season he's getting a better evaluation from his players and parents.
Well, I don't know. It's like the app Dave did. They tested it and they discussed whether it would or not, or should you use it. I believe, and Dave might entertain it, taking that 10 questionnaire and insert it as a part of a self-evaluation to see what the coach, he should do it at the mission statement exercise. But how would you apply it? When would you apply it to affect the app? Would it help the app? Or do you do the app first and then you qualify for the exercise?
Yeah. Well, Bob, I think that's the age-old question, right? It's like, feedback is it's fantastic when it's all good. When I hear I'm awesome, I love it. When my wife tells me you still don't know how to load the dishwasher, I'm like, yeah, okay, right. But the purpose of giving and receiving feedback is to affect some kind of change.
Change. Right.
But it only affects change in the willing, right? So, I think that's a question I'd love to explore down the road. Maybe you got some thoughts on it as a coach, and how many coaches would want to know mid-season? And will they take
Well,
it as?
they may feel threatened by it, but
Yeah.
I know myself, I wanted my players to give me feedback on how I handled situations or how I dealt with them or with other players on the team. Because how am I going to grow as a coach if I don't know how you feel about me? Like, there has to be a respect back and forth there, right? And I know from mentoring coaches, where mentorship is forced on them, they don't receive it very well. If they're receptive to it, it works very well. If they're told they have to have a mentor, then it doesn't really work very well. They feel threatened by it. So I guess that would be the same with this feedback on an evaluation.
Yeah. So one of the things in Power Player within the platform, if a player is on your team, for example, and you're the head coach, your assistant coaches also can input, comments and feedback. If they input a comment, something written, pardon me, that comment is attributed to that person.
Right.
The player knows it came from Coach Bob. Okay.
Right. So they're accountable to that.
If it's a rating, okay, they don't know who it came from. And that's intentional on our part. They don't know if it came from the assistant coach.
Yeah.
They don't know if it came from you, the head coach. They don't know if it came from both of you and was blended together into one.
Yeah,
okay?
That's good.
So
I like that.
it's anonymous within that coaching group at that level. So all the player knows is this is how the coaching staff, quote unquote, sees me in this regard. I don't know if it's Coach Bob. I don't know if it was Coach Wally or Coach Ed. I don't know. Or maybe it was all three of them. But I have this piece of information now. What do I do with it? Okay. So if you take that to the, evaluating a coach, if you were coaching your team and all you got was within, say, 5 categories: communication skills, preparation, knowledge of the game, fairness, whatever those categories are, if you got 19 anonymous ratings, you wouldn't know who rated you in what regard. The system would boil it down to, this is how your team sees you.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then, you would not be able to say, well, that one kid just doesn't like me. You won't know where that kid is.
Right. Yeah.
So, but you would have a true picture of how this group of young people that you're trying to, help, this is how they view your efforts to help them. So, that was some of the stuff that we explored early on. Again, I said we kind of went away from it, but I'd love to. We've had numerous coaches who've used our platform ask, well, can we do that? Because they go, I know I'd get great ratings. I know I would. They're confident. They're like, I know my parents would love me. The kids love me because I'm communicating through this app, and I'm positive and this and that. I'm confident I would get great ratings. So it's a tough nut to crack, I think, from our side, but I'd love to have a conversation with you about it at some point.
I got a question, Dave, about that. So the parents do see the intangible ratings made by the coaches, but they don't know which coach?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's from the coaching staff.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, what I used to do, Dave, when I coached was after every game, the coaching staff, the general manager, and we even had the trainer do it, so he felt part of it. We had an evaluation sheet on each player, and we had them rate them 1 to 5.
Love it.
And then we amalgamated that into one sheet, and that was put on the player's profile in his stuff. And when we had a break,
sorry, did the player see that?
Pardon me?
Did the player get that information?
Yes, I was just going to say. And then when we had if we had 2 games on a weekend or 3 and 4 days, you wouldn't have time to go over that with a player unless you were on a bus. You could or something. But when we had a practice day, at home. The player would come in. He was given his file, and he was allowed to look through it and ask whatever questions he wanted to ask. You know,
You basically
if
the
I agree
power.
with it, I thought I played better here. Why didn't you know what is your reason for saying I didn't? Or you've got me rated that I had a really good game here, but I thought I was average, and we would discuss it with the player.
Yep.
And they didn't know who, the amalgamated number, if it was 1 to 5 and it came out as a 3.5, he didn't know who gave him a 2 and who gave him a 4. He had no idea. His average number was 3.5. And then as a coaching staff, we would discuss that with him as to where we felt he was, what he needed to improve on, based on the previous week or 2 games or 3 games or whatever it was. Right. And we also talked to them about their practice habits and, all these other different things. I mean, it was a tool that we used, and I used it for a lot of years. And we also had players, so I would say 3 times a year, we would hand them a piece of paper and ask them to evaluate us, what they liked about us, what they didn't like about us, what they liked about practice, what they liked about bench management, like whatever they wanted to put on there. And then we would compile all that information. So it was good feedback for us. And then we would have the conversation with the players. Okay, this is what you didn't like. This is what we're going to try to do to change that situation. Right? Or this is what you like. Great. We're on board with that. And I mean, I think I've always taken the attitude that it's their team, not our team. And they have to be comfortable in their environment, or they're not going to perform to their best of their abilities. So,
Bob, I think clearly you should be working for Power Player.
Right.
I mean, I love to hear that. That's a fantastic. I mean, basically, that's in a nutshell what our platform does. It just does it digitally and with a lot more,
Exactly. I mean, what we were doing was very simple compared to what you're doing, but it was something, right? And not only that, it forced communication with players, right? Like it's hard to get to every player every day, which was always our goal, was that we talk to every player every day about something. It didn't necessarily have to be about hockey. It could be about family life, their school, their car broke down. What did you do to get it fixed, or whatever? Like it could just be about anything. It could have been about a basketball game that was on TV the night before. It didn't matter, but you had to build a rapport with every player so that they were comfortable to come to you with anything that they wanted to come to you about.
Yep,
especially in the age group, right? The age group of 16 to 20 and junior. Well, they're away from their parents. They need somebody.
Right.
Like you are really a surrogate parent at that point in their life.
Yeah.
Right. And the one thing that I would say that was a weakness was we didn't talk to the parents enough, probably, to give them feedback, because you didn't have a parent that even lived in the city, right? You saw them on some game days, and depending on when I coached in the U.S., most of your kids are Canadians. You don't see the parents hardly at all, and so reflecting back, I would say that was I missed the boat there. That's something I should have done more of.
But it was harder. Back then. I mean, so now, imagine you did all of those things through this platform. Those parents are automatically connected. We've got parents in Latvia that are getting feedback from the kids coach in Wisconsin.
No, I think this is a tremendous tool, actually.
Yeah, well,
covers a lot of.
Dave, what about agents? Bob, what about agents? Because you're at the highest level of junior hockey, and
you're saying like share this information with their.
No. I'm just taking into consideration the influence of agents on the parent and player, and your job as a coach to transmit belief.
Yeah, well,
and
I think the agents, if they've got a real high end player, they're not a problem. But when you've got a player that's let's say he's gonna be a 3rd to 6th round draft pick, that's where an agent can be a pain. Because they're trying to get the player drafted as high as they can, and they're telling the parent and the player that they will, and they can't affect that. I don't believe they can, anyways. I mean, a high-profile agent might be able to influence a team to pick a player a little bit higher, but he's not getting them from a 3rd round to a 1st round. Like that's not happening, and that can be an issue. And I don't know. I honestly don't know what the right way to deal with that is, other than you have a real heart to heart with the agent and say, this is the feedback I'm getting from NHL scouts. This is where the player fits, and go that way. But they're trying to obviously get the player or keep the player as a client. So their vision gets a little bit clouded there too, because it's dollars for them, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get a penny if a player gets drafted the first round or the last round. It makes no difference to me. I'm not invested that way. My investment is to improve the player, not just as a hockey player, but as a human being, so that he's productive in society when he leaves the game, because he's going to leave the game at some point in time. It might be in the near future. It might be after 10 or 15 years. To me, that's regardless. You're developing a human being, you're developing life skills. And so that's my investment in the player. The agent's investment in the player is purely dollars and cents in most cases. I wouldn't say they're all that way, but I mean, that's their primary focus, is to get the player drafted as highly as they can, get a bigger contract, get a bigger payday, right? And a bigger payday for the player too. Let's be honest. But
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
no,
It's just to be the best person you can be to get there.
right.
The dilemma at the highest level of hockey is the entitlement that goes with being the best player, and the lost sight of the importance of a team.
Right.
Now, in minor hockey, that's the issue. That's why this app is best suited to minor hockey.
Well, in minor hockey, Wally, I think that issue is getting bigger and bigger.
Oh, we know that.
Because of what they see at the NHL level, right? And
Yeah.
what the parents see. The parents see a Connor McDavid. They want their kid to be the next Connor McDavid, right? And they're blinded by everything that's associated to that, and it passes down to the kids.
Yeah.
And this entitlement thing, to me, is a huge issue, right from the minor hockey level right to the NHL. And it's
Well, we all know that. Like, we've talked about that. That's why we meet and talk once a week.
right.
We
So
want,
this tool that Dave is developing, that might help to counteract some of that, where the parents get a more realistic view of what their child is.
well, they would appreciate what coaches are trying to do for their child.
Yeah.
And if coaches don't do those things when they move up to your level, they may not want to play for you.
Well, and Bob, your the comment about parents and agents and even the kids understanding, having a self-awareness. I think it's pretty easy to spot the best skater on a team. Okay,
Right.
so if you have significant amount of data, enough data on that kid collected through Power Player, you've done the metrics, the coaches have evaluated this kid over time, blah blah blah. There's enough data that we've got kids the same age in Sweden that we have data for, and you may be in the 95th percentile for kids in Alberta. You're in the 65th percentile worldwide.
Right.
So you might want to relax and let the kid have fun. And he's 12, and he's going to change significantly by the time he's 16, 17, 18. Don't get in the way of that. Right? Like,
100%, I agree.
So awareness, on a worldwide, like, we know stupid things like, we know which kid, of course, it's only the kids that are within our platform, which kid who's 14 can do the most push-ups. We know, we have that data. Okay. Yeah. So you may think you can do 60 push-ups. You may think you're all that in a bag of chips. Well, there's a kid in Switzerland that can do 96.
Yeah.
And that makes you close to average, actually. So, congratulations. So it's a hard thing, I think, for some people to come to grips with the breadth of the sport. Like, it's, how can I put this? Your kid may be the big fish in the small pond.
Yes, exactly.
The pond is a whole lot bigger than you think it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of oceans out there.
Yeah, and so, I spoke with a young woman the other day, and she's from Finland. She was a professional volleyball player, and we got talking about Finland, and I'm like, what's the population of Finland? She goes, "Oh, I think it's like 6 million or whatever." I'm like, there's 6 million people in Chicago right here.
Yeah.
How many NHL players come out of Finland? How many come out of Chicago? What is going on in Finland that they can create that kind of success level at the highest, like what's going on? And so, that pond, it's not Chicago AAA. It's like, guess what? There's Finland, Sweden, Czech Republic, Latvia, Russia. Like, it's a giant world. And as we said to the Phillies guys, like, we would love to have 100 million data points on 10 million hockey players over time, so that we can see which coaching methodologies actually work, right? Like with metrics to back up that if you do this kind of coaching, it leads to this kind of player, this kind of person, this kind of output. We have, there's not enough information in the system to evaluate that at this point.
Dave, I don't like, I really like your excitement and discussing this, and Bob getting into this, and I brought up the agents. I don't give a tinker's damn about pro hockey. It's a business.
That's exactly what it is.
So I want to get back to the purpose the app serves with a far larger population.
Well, so
and number two, there's two issues with the app. It is elite athlete oriented, and it needs to be tempered to be female friendly. And I would suggest Kim is the one that will help with that, because there's that line between, achievement and females' perception of not wanting to look better than anybody else. And the other place is U11. I could condense the exercise, the drills you have, just by reducing the space and reducing the pace to teach before you measure.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
And then the app side, just a little bit of a change in vocabulary, and maybe at certain age groups modifying the languaging and eliminating some of the words there that might be more meaningful and applicable. The reason a child, the best life lesson he gets to play a team sport is to listen to the coach, learn to listen to the teacher, and that attentiveness, and then doing your homework, do what you're asked to do. So there's an area of benefit there in I'm talking from the numbers here.
Yeah.
I'm
So
talking minor hockey, USA Hockey, Hockey Canada.
Yeah.
You have the power to do something and make a difference. And they're getting caught up with Hockey Canada at any rate, with the elite level coaching. Their technical stuff is all for kids who can already skate, turn both ways, and do everything.
So I don't have the data in front of me, unfortunately, but the last time we did a real analysis, the usage of our platform is a pyramid, right? So, and the most usage is at the youngest level.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we don't have any. We've had a minor pro team use it, one minor pro team, but it's not designed for NHL. It's not designed for that. It's designed for development for kids who are needing guidance, who can change their behavior if they want to, based on the feedback that they're getting. And in our mind anyway, it's a neutral tool. You, the coach, and the kids are the variables in that neutral tool. How you use this tool is entirely up to you. So if you're coaching 7-year-olds and you're providing them with like only gameplay ratings and nothing, like you're doing it wrong, right? It's not the app that does that. It's you that chooses to do that. On the other hand, if you're coaching 7-year-olds and you're posting funny YouTube cartoon videos and going, "Hey, Billy, this looks like you," and great practice yesterday, and love that smile on your face, and you're coaching to a 7-year-old level.
Yeah.
Through this tool, it's a reflection on you. So we've tried to create something that's neutral. And Bob, I don't know if you've looked into the platform at all, but like it has built-in, metrics drills, like skating forward with a puck. Okay. So and we worked with, youth hockey coaches, NHL level coaches, a bunch of advisors to pull this together so that it could be quote unquote universal. So if you put a kid on the goal line and you tell him you got to skate as hard as you can past the second blue line, and I'm going to time you. It doesn't matter if it takes that kid 17 seconds, and then you put a NHL player on there and it takes them 4 seconds. Okay. Can the NHL player do it in 3.9 seconds next time? Maybe not. Can the little guy do it in 16 seconds, 12 seconds, 11 seconds, 8 seconds? They see themselves progressing. So the drills are kind of universal. And, the metrics are there to benchmark how the child is doing and to provide the coach with the knowledge they need to go, what's happening with Billy's mechanics here when he's skating with the puck versus without the puck? His stick is too long, right? Like whatever you can diagnose and fix. So we've tried to create a platform that's universal. The usage of that platform is entirely dependent on the coach. There's no prescribed way to use Power Player. Like when we first tested it, the coaches said, the guys that were going to beta test it for, what should we do? And we're like, I don't know, do whatever you want. Like, here's the tool. You can look inside it, see what it has. What do you think you should do? So we had, I think, Pee-wee age players. We had Bantam age players. We had some junior age players. All the coaches used it differently. And that was exactly what we wanted to see. The other thing they asked was, you've got a 0 to 100 rating scale here. What does an 80 mean? And our response to that was, I don't know.
What's it mean to you?
Yeah, you tell us how, so we looked at how, we let these guys use it. We took their usage data, we analyzed it, and it was a bell curve, 100% exactly as we expected it to be. You don't give a kid 100. A kid can't improve anything if they're 100. And nobody gives a kid less than a 50 rating, 60 rating. That's just not, you don't do that. Right? If a kid's misbehaving in practice or whatever, you give them a 60 to give them a wake-up call, and you explain why you gave them that 60. And then they change their behavior. You give them a 90 next time, or the odd 100. Nothing averages out to 100. So the other thing we learned in the platform is that at different age levels, if you look at a team, it seems to us, and we haven't looked at it maybe since the COVID diminished the data that was coming in, but like no one kid is the best at everything on a team. It just doesn't happen. Billy's the quote unquote highest rated skater. He's got the 4th ranked intangible. Johnny's the 3rd ranked skater. He's got the 2nd ranked intangibles, but he's the best puck handler. Oh, and by the way, he has not so great practice habits. These kids are all over the map, right? And we're not trying to create perfect human beings. We're trying to illuminate for them things under their control and they can choose to focus on, and behaviors that we want to accentuate. So for every level, we've told coaches whenever we do a demo with them, yes, the system collects metrics, but it's not digital timing gates and all that. It's like you with your thumb on your iPhone going, that's you crossing the line. It's not a precision metrics tool. It's a behavior modification tool. That's it. When you skate from the goal line to the second blue line and you got 12 seconds, next time you're going to go, I can beat that. I can do better than that. And then boop, you got it down to 11 seconds. It doesn't matter what the time was. It matters your approach to that particular thing and your mindset when you're going through it. So Wally, to your comment about, different age groups, it's mostly been adopted by coaches at the younger levels.
Yeah.
And
I'm
not AAA. I'm talking like AE, like, it's actually pretty gratifying to us.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. I don't see it as a behavior modification tool of need for the kids so much as for the coaches and the parent. The effect that it has on them connecting, the kid's going to get better. His behaviors are more likely to change.
Yeah.
Because the parent's a part of it. And the coach is a part of caring about him to get better.
And this as a teacher, Wally, like when a kid's parents are engaged, when everybody's on the same path, they're trying to achieve the same thing, the kid's more likely to try harder, and they feel the reward. They feel they're surrounded by adults they they believe are pushing them in the right direction.
No, I'm gonna do I don't know what parts of this I'm gonna edit, but this would be the business part. Number one, the value is so great that Hockey USA and Hockey Canada have to investigate this and possibly invest in it because it's so desperately needed. You and I and Bob and the Sharks, we can try to make a difference the way we are, but they have the capacity, the financial resources to make a bigger difference, to deal with the issues that are consuming most of the time of all the volunteer people leading the sport. So when you mention your kid going to a prep school for $10,000,
no, it was more than that to go to prep school. It was $10,000 to play AAA.
Okay, you can repeat that story, to play AAA hockey.
Yeah.
And the value of what do they get out of that? And this costs $30 a family. What do you get out of this?
Yeah, this is 3 lattes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, not much
For a
is it?
season. It's $30 for a season.
So
per kid.
Like with Al Ramsey, he really liked it from the get-go. He loves it. And now he's got a like-minded group of people that, every parent, once they've experienced it, they're going to want it. And the association will incorporate that into their fee structure. They must, to begin to serve the purpose of the game.
Well, when we talk about the financial side of things, and our goal is to get this thing as cheap as possible, obviously, and you do that with scale. If I walk upstairs here and go out in my garage, my son, he doesn't live here anymore, but for some reason his hockey gear is here. He doesn't have a garage, but like I counted them up the other day. There's 22 sticks in the garage.
Yeah.
Now I didn't pay for them all. He got some of them from his junior team, but I don't want to know how much I paid for sticks in my lifetime. I don't want to know. And so when I hear people go, "Oh, it's $30," ooh, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, there's 2 little pairs of skates back there that I kept from when the kids were little. And, what I spend on skates, I don't even want to know. I don't want to know.
You spend $30 on skate laces in a year.
Yeah, easy. So, it's a value. I love to hear you say that, Wally, because we hope and we believe that there is enormous value in this. And one of the values that we do hear from the programs that have adopted it is that, they get parents giving them feedback saying, we really appreciate this now. And, it's a brand builder for those programs. If a program, if a program's coaches provide this kind of feedback consistently and with the kind of, regular positive approach, it's a brand builder. And, where do you want your child to play hockey? Where do you want your kid to play? And you want them to play in the most positive environment. So anything that can shine a positive light on an organization seems to make sense to me.
Al, I was talking about you having some familiarity with the app. We've got into the validity and the dollars and cents of it. And you did say to me it's not that expensive. Is the value of it, like we've been talking about, is really enormous in terms of the stability and the cohesiveness it will bring, and it will bring in working together to make the kids better. It's hard to measure. It's like an intangible thing, but when I did the mission statement exercise for Hockey Canada and we put it together for them as a paid employee to be implemented, it slipped through the cracks. And that this app totally does that. It will bring people together, provide a perspective, and create long-lasting coaches who will be better coaches, technically and ethically. So I'm, just a matter of trying to get the word out to enough people, and who knows the bureaucracy of our administrative functions, organizations, but all minor sports, the people at the bottom criticize the next level, and the next level criticize the level above them, and so the association might complain about the state might complain about the national body. On teams, parents complain about the coach complains about parents, it might complain about the association not protecting them, not supporting them. It's the spinning wheel of what's going on. This is going on.
You forgot to mention one key group there, Wally, the kids. They're
course.
caught up in the middle of all that, right? They're just trying to play hockey or baseball or soccer or whatever. And
we forget what we're here for.
Sometimes, yeah.
We totally forget what we're here for. They're the most valuable resource. They're what we. And when I speak of a kid, I'm talking about Connor McDavid. He was a kid. He's growing up. He was well raised, well parented, and I think would appreciate an app like that. And his parents wouldn't be demanding he play with this team or that team because he'll get more ice time. He'll earn his ice time. And every kid learns to earn their ice time. But at what age?
Can I interject here?
Sure, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I got to get going right away. So I've been doing coaching stuff as we're talking here. And I just got a email from a girl I'd recruited. And I think it might, because I think having this information on her would help me as a coach. And she says she wants to know about next year, my goaltender. I wanted to let you know that I just made the U18 team Manitoba, which means she must be pretty good. We'll be in Dawson Creek the last week of November for the Nationals. And then sending me some videos. So she wants to know, and I told her that I have 3 first-year goalies right now, and I've never seen any of them play a college game. But I said none of them were their provincial goalie. So, and the way it is in this business, if you're better than someone, you take their place, right?
Yeah.
So it's having that kind of information. If I could find out about her, how she is as a person and all this sort of thing, and it would
Well,
help
Tom,
for sure.
you can't use the app to find out that information. You have to contact the coach of her community team or of her.
Well, you do
I
now.
thought there was rankings there that different coaches that said
Then
about
contact
their,
3 coaches.
behavior and all that. Well, I know that, Wally. I've been
Yeah,
doing that
yeah.
forever. I just thought the app did that.
It does. It does over time, obviously. And,
Yeah.
one of the other things that we haven't talked about is there's a whole, sort of personal profile thing that once a kid gets into the system, they can put as much or as little into their profile as they want. Other teams they've played for, other coaches they've played, they can list all this stuff. And one of the things that you can put in there is your grade point average. Because that's important. I live in the U.S. College hockey is the way to go.
It's
right?
important at state because I got players that can't get into programs.
Right. So we did a little analysis. How many kids put their GPAs in there? We're like, well, more than we thought. And then then the question is, if it's input by the child or by the parent, is it the truth? Right.
Yeah.
I had to lie about my grade point average my whole life. Right. So, we looked at it and some of these guys they're freely admitting they got a 2.6 grade point average. So
a lot of teams on their profile that they send about their players, they put that in there too. Like you get a lot of the AAA teams and prep teams, they have a whole profile of the players, and they're not much about their behavior, more talk to the coaches. But anyways, I just thought I'd throw that in. I'm going to play hockey, so I got to get going.
Gee, you're a lucky guy. Thanks for coming.
I am. Okay, take care.
Al, you got anything to add? You left for a while, but you picked up where we've been. So
Yeah, sorry, Wally, I had to go to work there for a half hour.
Clearly, you got to quit your day job, man. It's not.
Yeah.
You have too much of your time.
Yeah. I did want to get back. When I just joined, I missed some of the conversation, but I heard you talking about cost, and I know that the cost is fairly reasonable. Is it, Dave? Is it $30 a player or 30 a team?
I should know this. It's $30 a player.
Yep.
For a year. So,
For a year.
If you sign your kid up in September, it's good through the following September. So you can cover a season, the summer, and into the tryouts or whatever for the next season. We've got a lot of kids who they play on a team, then they go to summer programs or whatever. If the summer program also uses Power Player, they just provide their number and they get data from that coach as well. So, it doesn't matter how many coaches or different organizations are inputting, it's the same price. The account is open.
Right.
Paid.
So for the value that you're talking about, like all the things that it offers, right? And it's been 2 years since I looked at it. I think maybe 3 years now.
Yeah, probably.
So it's been a little while, but I mean, it's huge value, right? And for $30, it seems like a no-brainer, except that the cost was the reason why our association didn't implement it, right? And the challenge that I had when I brought this up at the board, and it was a few years ago, right? So we had a number of things that we wanted to do. One of the things that I was successful at bringing in was something that had like a fundraising model, basically where I was able to cover the cost by doing some fundraising stuff. And because, even though it's only $30 a player, when you're talking 400, 450 players, it suddenly becomes a number that you got to raise that money somehow, right? Because we're a nonprofit. We don't have additional funds that we can draw from, really. The goal is to end up at zero at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So normally for anything extra that we do, whether it's buying equipment, like even, we went out and bought some passers and stuff like that there the other year. Like, in order to do that, I ran a Christmas tournament. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this, so anything that we do requires something like that.
Yeah,
Because
most of our adoptees, they just ask the parents, "Hey, we got this thing. You guys want feedback?" And the parents say, "Yeah." I go, "Well, it's $30," and they're like, "Here's my $30."
right. So I think that that's probably a conversation, for the when we get back to next year, because we got a program that we're trying to get off the ground. We have one this year that we're getting off the ground for girls, and then next year we've got something that's kind of special that we've been looking at. But we just got to get through the first part of the season before we pick it up.
Yeah.
But I think that doing something like this would be, I think it's worth at this point relooking at our tuition structure and including that in the tuition, because that's the real answer, right? Is like if we want to, if it's $30 a player, well, you take your tuition, and which is almost $2,000.
Here's my marketing idea for that. I've talked about this with Tracy. And I've said to Tracy, he's talked to Steve, and I've made it, shared it with you. Why don't you try the app for the year, and the parents find out how good it is,
Mhm.
and then it'll be an easy sell.
Yeah, we've offered significant discounts to large groups, and I'll tell you one group in Sweden. They ran the program for the year, and then when the season ended, they ran they called it a power player combine. So they invited kids from all over Sweden to come to wherever they were, and they ran them through the power player drills. And they charged these kids, to go to this camp, and they made enough money to pay for power player about 5 times over for their own club.
Yeah,
And that's perfect.
Right. So I mean, they kind of used it as, the combine itself. The fact that these kids would leave and go back to Stockholm or whatever with data, was valuable. The parents were like, "Yeah, we want that." So they used the platform itself as the hook to kind of get people to come to the combine, and they raised some dough on that. So,
well, that's really powerful, Dave. Like the ability for, again, I'm not talking about like, a AAA club or a junior team or something like that. When we're talking about youth associations, right, that are nonprofits, even small dollars can become an issue, right? Because you always have people who, anytime there's a talk about increasing tuition, it can be problematic, right? So if there's that kind of an ability or something like that, that's enormous.
Yeah, and the whole, like my kids went to them. I know Steve, my partner, he's got a AAA 15-year-old son now who's playing pretty good hockey, and he says, he'll send Michael to a camp, for a week, and it's $750 to go to this camp. And then when he leaves, he's like, "Well, how did it go?" And he goes, "Oh, good. Yeah. Well, what'd you leave with?" "I just went to the camp." So if for $30 he'd been provided with feedback from those camp coaches specific to his abilities, the value of that $750 or $600 or whatever it was that it cost to go to the camp becomes valuable. He went, he got instructed, he left with some tangible things he can do, and away you go. So, there's people that are kind of figuring out the value of providing this kind of feedback. And our goal is to get it down to as cheap as possible, which means we got to get lots of people on the platform. The more people get on the platform, the lower we can make the cost of admission,
Right. And that's the beauty of digital. I mean, hockey people are funny people, right? We'll pay $700 for a 3-day camp or a 4-day camp or whatever, but a $20 tuition increase is
crazy.
Yeah, can't have that. But
I got a question for you.
I mean, again, like the value that I can't even say it enough. Like I think the value that's in the platform that you built is enormous.
Well,
right?
Thanks.
It is really, really good, really well done. So
thanks, I appreciate that. We just need to get it. We joke amongst ourselves all the time. I don't know how many hockey coaches there are. There's thousands. We just need 500 of you. That's it. Because if we get 500 of you, and the parents that you are communicate. They don't all stay with you. They travel. They go to other clubs. And why aren't we getting feedback? Well, why aren't you? It's I hate to use the word viral in these times, but it's a viral thing. We've had a lot of people say, coaches will contact us and we'll ask how they heard about it, and they go, well, one of the parents moved here from Saskatchewan and they asked us why we weren't using it. So now we are, it's
Here's my point. And I've been thinking ahead. Like I thought Al would be a guy to experiment with it this year.
sure.
And I said at no cost for that one team. And then it'll validate the value of it. And then in his capacity, the parents are going to want it forever.
That's the plan.
So I'm just saying, from a marketing point of view, we have associations here in Calgary that can test the app for us, and its value with one team only will sell the product. It will then take off because the parents, we're going to add this to our fee because it's that valuable. It doesn't become okay, we're going to fundraise, we're going to hold this camp, and there's all kinds of camps going on, but that's a good way of approaching it. Somebody has to initiate it and dedicate it to the cause of $30 back to each participant kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking off the top of my head. And
Yep. But when it comes to cost, I agree. Parents are, strange. We would think nothing of like, oh, we got a tournament in Dallas. Okay, let's go to Dallas. Cost me $3,000 for the weekend to go to Dallas, right? Like, and I would do this. Hotels, food, airfare. I mean, and why am I going to worry about $30? Like, can I remember that Dallas tournament? Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I think I had fun. It's a strange phenomenon when it comes to the dollars and youth sports. Travel, especially at the travel levels. I don't even want to know what we spent on travel. I don't want to know. Because if I take those dollars and bought Tesla stock, I'd be a lot happier today.
Well, I think we all appreciate the value, and it's a matter of getting it out there. My approach is a mission statement exercise, and use. I got a call from Daryl Belfry, so you guys keep talking. Okay.
Sounds like hockey in Canada. Well, I've actually got to jump off here in about 5 minutes or less, so I'm kind of maxed out my time here. But Tracy, I see you on there. You're muted.
I just I love being a fly on the wall in these meetings and just taking everything in. And like to go back to Al, I think when Al first introduced me to the product and put me on to you guys, I took a look at it and instantaneously saw potential value on so many different levels, right? And I think it brings immense value in so many different ways. And I think some of the challenges that I'm exploring right now is how do we navigate that challenge, right? And the challenge is that association level, whether they have 400 or 1,000 kids, what is the perception of value that they need brought to the table to add that to their tuition fee? So most hockey parents, I find from the conversations I have across Canada, is that all they're aware of is a dollar amount, right? So it's not like when you register your kid, I've yet to see an association that gives them a breakdown of that $1,000. Your kid's going to get X number of practices, so many games, jerseys, costs, so on and so on. It's accepted. Okay, well, it's going to cost me $1,000. I don't know what I'm getting for that $1,000. Yeah. And where associations right now that I've been talking to are being bombarded with is everybody wants to reallocate whatever portion of that $1,000 to their solution, whether it's concussion studies. We've got technology to study concussion studies. Again, the other challenge that you have is you're not going to run in what Al's doing with his community down there. It's a rare breed that you have that kind of talent and knowledge sitting on a board. Most associations that I've ran into, a lot of them are like volunteer positions because it's a volunteer role. And some of the, they might have great administrative skills, but they don't have great hockey sense. So they're investing money in areas that people that Al or Wally or Bob might look at and scratch their head and go, why is an association spending money on that? Right? Where they should be reallocating the money here and that. So, but anyways, and that's, I just kind of take an opportunity to kind of some of the challenges that we're going to be looking at. And I think the approach should be is if we could work with an Al Ramsey or a few select solutions and say, okay, this is the value that we know is undisputable that we bring to the coaches, to the parent groups, or the player, and so on. How can we better improve what value do you want to see from an association level? What would you like to see the data formulate for you? So what would your, you know what I mean? So how can we better use this platform? How would you suggest we should be keeping in mind when we bring on not just 2 teams, but 30 teams or 20 teams or 4 teams across the novice division? What should we be keeping in mind on that front? And I've had those conversations with some, Kevin Kalbalka, the president of Hockey Calgary, and a few other guys, and they said, Tracy, it's exactly, yeah, I see the value and so on, but I can't wrap my head around the value that it's going to bring across the association or across 400 kids or across, what is it, 15,000 kids in Calgary playing hockey right now across the broad, help me better understand the value that can be as a part of the decision-making crew in making those decisions on what directions we go, right? So nobody's disputing the value it brings to the table for feedback and gathering matrix. It's just like, help me wrap my head around from a director of development, how this tool can help me better make solid decisions on development, long-term skilled initiatives, and so on from the data that I can potentially collect. Does that make sense, Dave?
It does. And, with any data-driven, solution, you need data, right? So,
exactly.
So, what would a lot of power player data tell a hockey director at a 11U and lower level? It gives you all kinds of insights into what your coaches are doing and what the outcomes of their activities actually are.
Yeah.
Like if you benchmark your young players, and then you have different coaches run them through different drills, and certain kids improve more than the other kids did, then you've got insight into what works and what doesn't work in terms of drills and in terms of practice design, in terms of whatever the tactical stuff is that you're bringing to these kids. You've got insight. So this whole platform is about collecting enough information with enough, I'll use that term soft again, but soft information. Hard information like metrics about, speed and strength and things that can be measured, and also the softer stuff, the squishy stuff, but it shines a light into what actually works. And then, we're right back to the original question, is like, works towards what? What's the goal here? Are we trying to win games? Are we trying to create great little people who love to play hockey, who are thrilled to be at the rink and are improving their skills over and over and over? And yeah, they're winning some games along the way. But what's our objective here? And so it goes back to Wally's mission statement and alignment and all that stuff. The more data, the more information you have, how can I put this? When you do an evaluation, you take a bunch of 7-year-olds and you throw them on the ice and you're trying to break them up into, their teams for the season. I've done this. I've sat in the stands with a clipboard and a piece of paper and gone, which one's what number 37? What do I think is skating? I'm sitting there for 5 minutes looking at this skating, trying to look at 40 kids to rank them to say, yeah, this kid skates. They're skating in this group. Maybe they should be on this team. This evaluation process, you're trying to gather information, and that process is as good as it can be. This process is a highly advanced version of that, and it benchmarks these kids so that the teaching techniques we apply to them can be proven or disproven. The side benefit is the parents see this happening, they see the feedback, and they appreciate it. So it's a win-win-win as long as it's applied properly.
Al, I've got a point to make that adds value. It's a new thing, a new thought about what you're doing. And I'm going to take the time to run this by you because it's not in your app, but it could be so easily. The evaluation of ranking of players, this idea of evaluation came to me from a former player I coached who took on the volunteer job of the novice age group, which was the U8 age group in a large community in Calgary. 12 teams, they had to pick 12, and they leveled them from 1 to 12. When they evaluated players, one group of coaches evaluated skill, one developed hockey sense, and one evaluated the intangibles, compete, coachability, whatever, but it was really the compete station. The hockey sense station, given the degree of ability they have, could they think a little bit? And the skill station is obvious. It's the simplest thing. You can pick out your top third, bottom third, middle third easily. So they did the evaluation where the coaches, the evaluators isolated those stations. They ended up picking. Now, initially, there were very few in the advanced skill station. The middle group is the largest, and the middle group becomes the largest, but they gradually moved towards, over the course of the evaluation camp in 3 stations, they got filtered out pretty good by those 3 scoring metrics, 2 of which are subjective. I suggest hockey sense is something those coaches need to learn. You can teach hockey sense by asking questions and making them think. So you can evaluate, is the kid a smart player? The intangibles are done. Hockey sense isn't. Skill is. The bridge of the gap between skill and thinking is what coaches of tomorrow are doing. Al Ramsey's experienced it with his exposure to our figure it out concept. Give them the structure, let them play, but evaluate it. So coaches have to learn how to do that. When this coach did this at Springbank, he had a little bit of difficulty, getting that position, but volunteer parent as he was, they picked their 12 teams and they thought 2 really good teams. They both should be Division 1. And the board tried to say, no, we only want 1. We want to make sure we can compete at the top level, like 1 team. No, they had 2. They won every of the 12 levels in the city. They won 8 of the levels, and their Division 1 teams played in the city final. So when you want to talk outcomes and subjective metrics, those are subjective metrics. They eyeballed the skill.
Sure.
They eyeballed the hockey sense. Now, these are knowledgeable people. Just, can this kid think? Does this kid work hard? That's all they rated. They ranked them in those 3 areas, and they ended up with those outcomes. They didn't get their job back the next year. They got those results with that selection system. So the parent group whose kids didn't get on one of those one teams, and there are always a group of people that aren't like-minded like we are in terms of the good of the game and what it's doing for them. The wheel spins. They come around, and this guy is dealing with the same issue. His kid is now in midget AAA, and it's a spinning wheel. There's just no ethical approach to it, and there's no technical approach to a concrete process. So, but I wanted to share that, and I'm glad Al got back on, because Al, I believe if it requires, it wouldn't require you to make this app become by your, but I'd like you to experiment with it and say that will sell it. Will one coach experimenting with the app, finding value in it, make it expand to all coaches and to the association? Al, in your capacity at the association, it'll likely happen. You'll know how it works. You'll be able to sell it. I don't know, but that's what I'm saying here.
Well, here's our. I can give you a little bit of an insight into our experience with that. We've had clubs adopt the program, club wide. 800, 900 kids or 1,000 kids in a club, and within the coach group, some coaches feel like, oh, here's this thing being pushed on me that I got to use. Okay. Yeah. Other coaches are like, holy crap, where's this been my whole life? And then there's a bunch of people in between. So the usage patterns are, scattered along that continuum. You've got coaches that just look at Power Player and they're like, this is my tool. I finally found something I can actually use. And other coaches, they didn't use it, or they used it very little. And, we've had a lot of discussions about this. It's like, as I mentioned, my partner, Steve, his wife is an elementary school teacher. She goes, it's not optional to provide report cards. It's my job. It's the deal. It's what every kid is working towards. They're working towards their report card. That's it at the end of the year. So, we can't make, providing feedback. It's not a mandatory thing. It's a voluntary thing. And a certain kind of coach with a certain mindset. And I think, the group we've had on the call here, you guys sort of seem to indicate you've got, and Bob, you pretty much invented the product years ago. So congrats. If you were handed this thing 10 years ago, 15 years ago, your mindset would have been, hell yeah, let's do this. Right. So
it's a brainer.
Yeah. And so, to expect that, you can bring it into an association and have it just be across the board, adopted and heavy usage, I think that's the goal. I don't think it's the reality. As I said, we're looking for 500 great coaches, because ultimately the big experiment in all of this is if those 500 great coaches continue to do this, you have kids that come through their system. Where do those kids end up? What happens? What can we prove out over time as this data is collected? And that will tell the tale. I think I can, my kids are old enough that I think when my son first started playing down here, the small area games, USA Hockey hadn't brought that in yet. And once they brought it in, there's a lot of people pushing back on that, like half ice practices. What are you doing? And I talked to one coach in Canada years later, and I said, he was a college coach. And I said, what do you think about the small area games? And he goes, oh man, He goes, well, who won the World Juniors? The U.S. had won the World Juniors, I guess, at that time. And he goes, they're the first cohort to come through that program. And he goes, they out stick handle us in the small areas. Like they just that's where they won the game. So all that pushback on the new thinking, it's part and parcel of sport, but ultimately, if the new thinking proves itself to be effective, people used to make fun of Roger Nielsen, Captain Video, right? Now every Pee-wee coach is paying a service to cut video for his players. So Roger wasn't so crazy after all. But anything new, it takes time to settle in and become sort of recognized and accepted and okay, to the point where it's like not universal, but accepted enough that it becomes prevalent. And I think that's our challenge.
While you were talking, I got a call from Daryl Belfry. Everybody else knows about him quite well. He's the guy. He's really happy. I'm coming out to work with the Leafs development staff, and he said scouts, coaches. He says he can't wait. You're just going to be. This is what he said to me. I'm glad you're coming out so I can spend a week with you just to share your, again. He was here for a week, but now he's got me in the door of the Toronto Maple Leafs talking about these things. Exactly. Which they are about. The organization. But the coaches need it. The scouts.
And I think if coaches, how can I put this? If the coach of Boston College, says, he needs to see data on the kids he's considering, where's that data coming from? Like, it can be pulled into the system or it can be brought in, demanded by the parents at the bottom level. It's kind of working both ways towards the middle,
Yeah. No,
listen, I've got to jump off here. I've got an actual, day job as well. So,
well, we might have broken a record here. So
Wally, sorry to interrupt, but
hopefully
Wally,
your time was an investment for the success of your program.
Thank you. And I appreciate you having me on. I think I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. And anytime you can get like-minded people together, something bubbles up and happens. And Bob, I'm serious. Like, well, you should be working for us. You kind of, I'm gonna call you.
Okay.
Okay. I'll send you his contact information.
Please do.
And all right, everybody. It's we broke a record, 3 hours, 2 minutes. So take care. Next week, Barb Chambers is on, a clinical psychologist whose husband Tim Bothwell played and coached in the NHL, and she's talking to us related to her work with corporations like Good Life, and she works with them on mental health and performance. And so it's going to relate to previous speakers we've had on, but as usual, a great session. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
guys,
Dave.
Thanks.
Guys, see you. And
Take
go
care.
Canada. Go Canada, go without Poulin, our best player, but that's okay. Talk to you later.